across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. 3 minutes past 10 is the time. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. You already knew that. We're very feisty as well with JK today. I'm hoping it's going to be pretty feisty with us. I'm hoping for a very feisty PMQs later at midday. We'll be covering that. I mean, if Kemi Badenoch doesn't go on the appointment of Peter Mandelson as our ambassador to the United States and what the Prime Minister knew and when and whether these documents are all going to be published, then there's no hope for her. I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen. There is so much to talk about. You do not want to miss a thing, whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker. And if you're watching on YouTube and your connected device, thank you so much for joining us. If you missed anything from the show earlier in this week, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, and you never have to miss anything. We are, of course, going to be discussing Lord Mandelson. I mean, he's still a lord, still allowed to be called a lord. He can still get a good table at a restaurant with the old, oh, it's a table for Lord Mandelson, even though he's not going to be sitting in the Lords anymore. But he was basically retired before he was booted out. But he is facing now a criminal investigation by the police over allegations that he leaked market-sensitive information from Number 10 to Jeffrey Epstein, the paedophile financier, who was his best pal. There are a whole load of allegations there. I mean, this is looking very bad for him. Also, some questions about Prince Andrew, whether he could face allegations for trafficking for sex after another woman. We know a second woman had come forward saying she was basically trafficked by Epstein to Prince Andrew, as he then was. But we understand a third woman, it would appear, has also gone to the police. But so we'll be talking about all of that. Andrew, of course, it turns out on Monday night was booted out of his big grace and favour mansion, Royal Lodge, near Windsor in the dead of night, and is now living in Norfolk. But I mean, you know, he's still in a home that most of us would consider a dream home. I think he'll probably cope, all paid for by his big brother rather than by us. I'm also going to be talking about the small matter of the National Cancer Plan, because basically if you get diagnosed with cancer in the UK by our wonderful, please stay indoors forever, don't ever have a life again or go to work, wear a mask forever, save our NHS, you've got a less chance of staying alive 5 years later than, well, let's face it, most other comparable countries. Is that down to money? Is it down to something else? We'll try to find out. We'll talk to cancer specialist Carol Sikora about that. Loads to talk about. I'm delighted to say joining me for all the chat it's Claire Pearsall, former Conservative government advisor. I think you're quite enjoying this week, Claire.
I don't know why you would suggest that.
Here's the thing.
So much fun.
The world is divided into people, largely, I would say largely, there's a small subset, and we're going to be talking to one of those people in about half an hour's time. But the world is divided into people who don't really have an opinion on Peter Mandelson and people who've met him and hate him.
Yes. Yeah.
And we've got Adam Bolton, who used to be political editor at Sky, who considers always considers Mandelson to be a friend, and is still speaking really very highly of him. And some people, you know, seem to like him. I'm always bemused by this. Utterly charming, manipulative, all the things that he says that Jeffrey Epstein was. But Jeffrey Epstein's tentacles are everywhere. We haven't seen all these Epstein files yet. Apparently, you know, there's 3 million documents. No one's even gone through all of them yet and put it all together. Because you have to know stuff to know whether a document is relevant. So it's, you know, you have to piece it all together over the years. But what's come out so far, both involving Mandelson and Prince Andrew as was, and Sarah Ferguson, damning for both. Let's start with Mandelson, because yesterday he apparently retired from the Lords. He was going to be booted out. He can still call himself a Lord. I mean, got to be honest, who cares? This is just not something that bothers me from day to day. You can put your ermine cloak on at home and prance around in your tighty whitey pants if you want to, Petey. I don't care, as long as you're not in public life. But you're probably not going to be able to do it behind bars. Criminal investigation by the police over his Epstein emails. Part of this actually is also coming from his former boss, Gordon Brown, the former Prime Minister, who has made it very clear. He wrote to the Cabinet Office in September, Cabinet Secretary, saying, look, there's evidence that's come out already in what we've seen the Epstein files, suggested Peter Mandelson was leaking sensitive information. We now know about, bailout of banks and goodness knows what. Highly sensitive information. It could be insider trading, it could be, breach of the Official Secrets Act, misconduct in public office, you name it. There's some serious crimes that are being alleged here. And he says he was told by the Cabinet Secretary, no, that they have no record of any emails or anything. That's might come back to haunt the Cabinet Secretary, the most senior politician in the country. That's Sir Chris Wormold.
Yeah, and I think it does highlight the fact that the reason they're saying that is because allegedly Peter Mandelson has been sending all of the emails via his personal email account, not a government email account. Now,
but those emails have to have gone from his work email to his private email.
Well, that's
you have
what
to
you
forward
would think.
them, don't you?
That's what you would think. There's some rumour going about that they were sent directly to his private email anyway, and bypassing the official government email. I don't know how true that is, but I think it shows that the Cabinet Office guidelines when it comes to using private technology and private email accounts isn't fit for purpose.
Well, we're back to Hillary Clinton and her emails, but of course then all the Trump people, the Trump kids were all basically doing exactly the same as they'd accused Hillary Clinton of.
Well, this is it.
Yeah, well, there's obviously a security issue here, isn't there? But look, I mean, again, Peter Mandelson either can't recall anything, he's got no recollection of things, or he hasn't spoken out. He's gone remarkably quiet in the last 24 hours.
I find it absolutely outstanding that he couldn't remember receiving a payment of, what was it, $75,000?
Yeah, this is the... Yeah,
I would notice if that money had hit my account.
I think that was, again, that was one of the little pinpoint moments that was very telling. And the casual way, and it's the same with Andrew and Fergie, this casual way, what is it? And will you cover my business class flights and fly me to here and fly me to... These, again, rich people taking more freebies from other people who are richer than them. They're just tacky money grubbers. Peter Mandelson was earning very good sum of money by that point. Yeah, he'd bought that home in Notting Hill, which then probably trebled and quadrupled, God knows what, in value. He'd earned 180 grand plus expenses and everything when he was a trade commissioner for the EU for 4 years. He'd been a cabinet minister. I mean, he's earned good, solid money for a long time and had a property that massively appreciated value. And yet he appears to have many more millions than perhaps. Put it this way, he's fantastic at investing. Yes. The man has had the most amazing ISAs compared to the rest of us. They've been paying out amazing interest rates. I think there's going to need to be investigation into an awful lot here. Yeah. But Gordon Brown accusing Number 10 of a Mandelson cover-up. That's, later stuff emerging that he was basically, while he was Business Secretary, and to all intents and purposes, Deputy Prime Minister. He was right-hand man to Gordon Brown, even though they'd previously hated each other when Tony Blair was Prime Minister. Gordon Brown thought he needed to have Mandelson in office with him, and especially around the time of this financial crisis that happened in 2008, 9, 10. That basically he was trying to get Gordon Brown out. Bye-bye Smelly was one of the email exchanges with Epstein. Today, now you'll be able to explain this better than most, I think. Someone who works, you work for in Parliament for the Deputy Speaker, Yeah. So the Tories have tabled what's called a humble address to the Commons, and this is about trying to get all the documents relating to Mandelson's appointment as US Ambassador published. And this is basically about what did the Prime Minister and his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, who was one of Mandelson's protégés, they're everywhere. It's like they're breeding. What did they know at the time when they appointed him, and what vetting was done? We know it wasn't all done before he was appointed. So what does this humble address mean? How does it work?
OK, so it's a piece of parliamentary procedure which is not used that often. It's normally in response to the King's speech when they do the state opening of Parliament. And it's essentially a direct call from the House of Commons, normally the opposition party, to the monarch to instruct the department to release all of the documents. So it's a call for papers is what they call it. Right. And it's quite wide-ranging.
So almost sort of go above the government.
Go above the government and you say to the King, you make them release everything that we want. That's it in a nutshell. Now, the government have come back. It's quite a broad piece of legislation that's been put down by the Conservative Party. It covers absolutely everything. Electronic communications, payments, emails, text messages.
Minutes from any meeting.
Absolutely
anything that was done in relation to Peter Mandelson and any conversations with any senior staff and the Prime Minister.
Absolutely. And special advisors, more importantly. So they've increased the scope of it. The government have come back with a small amendment to it. They've accepted the face of the bill.
And the reason they've done that is because despite having 400 odd MPs, they don't believe that actually the anger on the backbenches about this is so huge, and anger against Keir Starmer generally is so huge, they cannot be sure that they would be able to basically defeat the Tory amendment.
Exactly.
So the Tory vote.
So their amendment...
That's quite something.
It is, when you've got a major majority like that and you're only sub 2 years into a government, to have that kind of level of worry.
You're into kind of vote of confidence territories then.
Well, I think you are. I mean, the amendment is so adding except papers prejudicial to UK national security or international relations. That's open to interpretation.
It's very open to interpretation. They can pretty much not release anything. That's like releasing a whole load of documents and everything is blacked out, isn't it?
It is.
The interesting thing about this, Keir Starmer will absolutely hate that the Tories have done this.
Yes.
Because he'll think it's a terrible sort of like thing for them. You know, it's just outrageous them to use this particular mode of getting information. Of course, the person who has most used this in recent years, you'll never guess who. It was this guy who was shadow Brexit secretary who was trying to stop the Brexit referendum being enacted. And what was his name, Claire?
Was it Keir
Starmer?
Yes.
It was Keir Starmer. So the irony, right back at you, lad, right back at you. But again, the key thing is we've got PMQs today. Kemi Badenoch is going to come out fighting on all of this, isn't she?
She is. But I think this is almost a sideshow. She's going to be lining that up because if there are no urgent questions or statements, then the humble address will begin at 1 o'clock. So she's going to use this, I think, to play a little bit of mischief. So she might chuck him a few curveballs that he's not really expecting, because if he's prepped for that, she may not go entirely on it to
put him on the back foot. It's very easy to put Keir Starmer on the back foot, though, generally on these things. I mean,
by saying good morning to him.
Yeah,
normally.
Exactly. Well, let's turn to... actually, I want to answer the question on this. You're welcome to put your calls out, as you know, on any topic at all, and in any aspect of this. But I would particularly like to know, should Keir Starmer publish everything he knew about Manderson's links with Epstein when he appointed him as US ambassador? Because we know that it was already in public domain that they were friends. There'd been photographs of them. We knew they were friends. He hadn't denied that. And we knew that they'd been friends since Epstein had been convicted of trafficking a 14-year-old girl for sex prostitution. So what did they know? How much did they know? How much did they pretend not to know? Because when the Prime Minister, and I promise you today at some point, he's going to say, as we're tweeting on his behalf, as Health Secretary said this morning in interviews, the people we really need to be thinking about are the victims, the women and girls who were trafficked for sex and abused. Well, yeah, but we should have been thinking about them when you appoint a man who to be the top job in the UK's top diplomatic job in the world as our ambassador to Washington. When you appoint someone who is his big mate and didn't believe the charges, even when he'd basically, to all intents and purposes, pleaded guilty and did a deal to be in open prison for just two charges involving only one girl, pleaded himself down. But I mean, was the Prime Minister thinking of the women and girls then? I'm not sure he was. So I want to know, should Keir Starmer be forced to publish everything? What do you think we're going to find out? Do you think Morgan McSweeney, his chief of staff, is going to last in his job? He's very much a protege of Peter Mandelson. Does any of this matter? I'd like to hear from you. We're getting lots of calls on this, but does any of this matter? Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1. Standard network rate a message. You could argue more or less about Prince Andrew. I don't really care where Prince Andrew, whether he has a title, whether he's an HRH. I'm not interested in any of that stuff anyway. I don't care where he lives. I just don't want him to be costing the taxpayer or anything. He's been booted out of Royal Lodge. We knew that was going to happen. This huge white mansion. The word lodge. It's a palace, for goodness sake. It's a massive house. And he's been booted out of that. Apparently, dead of night on Monday night, basically, the king was like, get the hell out. Take your wife with you, ex-wife with you. There are allegations that Epstein sent a second woman to the UK for sex with Andrew. They're looking into that. J.D. Vance, the US VP, has talked about Andrew testifying before Congress. Does it matter where Andrew lives? He's now gone off to the King's private estate, Sandringham. So not in Windsor, which is public land. He could be seen driving around. It's private. No cameras there. It's in Norfolk. It's paid for by the King personally. I mean, the property's supposed to be in Wood Lodge, isn't ready yet. But either way, the property's in now and the property's going to move in too, which is being renovated, are both beyond most people's wildest dreams for their home. So let's all stop the break. He's not living in a mud hut. But does it matter where he lives?
As long as it's not costing the taxpayer, no, I don't particularly care. I think it's good that he's out of Royal Lodge, and as it should be, because I don't want to be funding it. If the King wants to pay for it, that's entirely his own business.
That's families.
Yeah, and it is, and that's a decision for them. I mean, he's not going into a 2 up, 2 down, is he? So it's going to be a nice...
better than most 72-year-olds.
Yeah, he is. He's going to have a nice life there. I think he's in an inordinate amount of trouble, and I wouldn't be surprised if he disappeared off overseas somewhere to go and deal with...
Dubai has been mentioned, hasn't it? Bye.
Yeah.
I mean, we could club together for the airfare because he hasn't got Epstein to pay for it. Fergie, take Fergie with you.
Andy.
As a mum, by the way, this is the thing, and Sarah Vine's written about this in the Mail today, and it's something I said on the show. That the first thing that struck me was that Sarah Ferguson taking... or messaging Epstein, by then a convicted convicted paedophile. So, I mean, soliciting a 14-year-old girl for prostitution. Really? And she took her girls, her 19 and 20-year-old girls as they were then, to him. She sent photos of them. I mean, let's be honest, they weren't his type, looking at the women that he was sexually abusing. But absolutely horrific. That she would just treat this all so casually. And you've got to wonder, I mean, I'm sorry, apparently they're a wonderfully close family and all very loving, but what are you doing taking your teenage daughter to meet with a man with that sort of conviction?
What are you doing even sending him text messages?
Marry me.
I just, when you have a kid, I never understood this until I had one. Yeah. The level of protection that you feel towards this tiny little helpless child. And mine's a strapping 6'2" lad. But I would absolutely lay in front of moving vehicles for him. I would never make him feel uncomfortable with the people that I spoke to. And if he did, I would listen to that, because he means more to me than any of these people ever would. And I don't understand why she doesn't feel like that.
Yeah, it's genuinely disturbing. Yeah. I think disturbing is the right word there. Do you think there's any chance that Andrew could possibly be facing any sort of charges? Because I have a funny feeling. We were discussing on the show yesterday, I mean, lots of people calling in, do you think there's going to be a proper investigation into all of this, with Andrew or Peter Mandelson? Do you think there'll be an establishment cover-up? Because I still think, at the end of the day, there will be an establishment cover-up. I still don't accept that, but at the very least, the late Queen's most senior staff didn't know what Andrew was up to, didn't know where he was staying. We've had senior guests from Royal Protection, Di Davies and others, who absolutely say it would have gone up the chain of command. There's no way the Queen's principal private secretary wouldn't have known. Would she have known she was involved in paying off the 10 million quid? I know we've all got massive respect for her, but at the end of the day, she put the institution first. They always, that was her thing. That's what we admire her for. She put the institution first. It's always about the firm. But at that point, Prince Andrew, as he was then, testifying in a court case about whether or not he did or did not have sex with a trafficked 17-year-old victim of sex abuse, was not in the interests of the firm. So it was worth paying off. Of course, he never met the woman, but the Queen contributed to that £10 million fund. We are reliably informed. What did she think it was for? I don't know, and I think that's the most disturbing thing. Normally you can start piecing things together and make reasonable assumptions. In this case, I just can't. I just don't know what she thought it was going to achieve. Did she just think it was all going to go away? It's one of those That was not
questions.
10 million quid well spent, was it?
No, it wasn't. And she must have known that wasn't going to be the end of it, surely, given the history that he had.
She should have asked her start. Again, I'm not beating down her, because she was an elderly woman. She was, I think was she by that time already widowed? I think.
Yes, and
I think she was, there's a lot going on there. But I mean, again, favourite son. We know what mums are like about their sons and daughters.
I know exactly,
sons.
and I'm a big fat hypocrite. But
but do you think we'll end up with charges against either man?
I think we will against Peter Mandelson. I think that one is more likely to succeed. I think the criminal investigation which is undergoing is going to I think have to be quite wide-ranging, and I think that everybody is well aware that if you hand it over to the Met Police, they've not got the best record in cover-ups and transparency. So I think that they're going to go all out with this one.
Indeed.
Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew, no, I don't think so. I think we'll see him disappear off into the sunset, never to be heard of. That's.
I have a funny feeling he's very bad at not being heard of. Let's also talk. We're going to be talking about the National Cancer Plan, which is an important story affecting an awful lot of us, increasingly as we get older and fatter. We're going to talk about that in the next half hour. But I want to talk also about yesterday vote in the House of Commons for the final second reading for MPs to vote on abolishing the two-child benefit cap. Bearing in mind, this is not that 20-odd quid that you get for every kid that you have. This is the £3,500 extra you get in the child aspect of universal credit. I'm explaining this for the benefit of the Reform MPs at the back of the room. We had this battle with Sarah Pochage, didn't know what it was. I'm not entirely sure that Nigel Farage knew what it was, but it's the £3,500 extra that you get for each child above 2 children, which was basically a very popular policy brought in by the Tories to basically, you get it for the first 2 kids if you're on universal credit, but you don't get it for any more. Labour have basically said children are in poverty. All the charities club together say children are in poverty. They're in poverty because their parents don't work, or only one parent works part-time. If they both worked full-time, like, by the way, most other parents now, or they didn't have 3, 4, 5, 6 kids, then their children would not be in poverty. They have made choices, they are poor choices, and they're expecting the rest of us to fund those choices. Bearing in mind also, very large percentage of those who are in need of this benefit, we're told, are from Bangladesh or from Pakistani heritage. Many of them actually born in those countries and are now living here. I'm not sure that's a good use of our resources. I'm old-fashioned that way, and the public largely agrees with me on that. Reform yesterday got a bit of a muddle over the vote in the Commons, though, because Labour voted obviously to scrap the two-child benefit cap and then told everyone how wonderful they were because they were curing poverty. Nigel Farage has dropped his support for abolishing it, instead calling it to be retained to fund support for pubs because he wants to keep pubs. Yeah. He was in this muddle where he was in favour of it and everyone was going, this is not a popular policy and it's a few billion quid a year. And then he dropped it for saying it would only be for British families, not for foreigners. Seems reasonable to me. I don't know why we're giving a benefit to any foreigner in the country. I wouldn't expect benefits if I went to France or America or Bangladesh. And only for those who are working. Because some of these people are working, the vast majority are not, certainly not both of them working. Bit of confusion in the Commons last night at the vote, though, because the 2 latest Reform MPs, Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick, accidentally walked into the lobbies. So they literally walked down a corridor, walked into the lobbies with the Labour MPs, apparently on the phone to Nigel Farage or whoever it was to say, which side are we voting on? We don't know what the policy is. And they ended up voting with Labour to scrap the child benefit cap, even though the official reform policy is now to keep it.
I was getting updates last night around this. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's proper nerdy. When you go through the voting lobbies, you now have to swipe your pass. So you can't do it accidentally. You have to do it deliberately. So there was some argument that they had done it accidentally and they hadn't gone through the lobby.
And they tried to get out.
Apparently allegedly tried to get out, so their vote hadn't registered, but it had because they'd swiped their pass. So it wasn't a mistake, and they were busy on the phone. But it does beg the question: their chief whip, Reform's chief whip, it's your job.
Who is it this week?
Lee Anderson.
Yeah, Lee Anderson, you didn't do your job properly. At the end of the day, let's not pretend that most MPs going through the lobbies when they're voting are literally going, which side am I going left or right? They literally have no idea about any of these.
No, the whips will usher them
in the right direction. But no one was there to do that. As Kemi Badenoch quite amusingly messaged after this, saying, well, they're Nigel Farage's problem now. Anyway.
I did quite like that.
Anyway, it's quite a bit of fun. 10:26 is the time. We're going to take a break. I want to hear from you. Should Keir Starmer publish everything he knew about Manderson's links with Epstein? He appointed him as US ambassador. A lot of this stuff was already known, and yet he still thought he was the right man for the top diplomatic job. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Any aspect of these stories involving Peter Manderson, Prince Andrew, as well as I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, and on any of the other topics, two-child benefit cap, the National Cancer Plan, you name it, get in touch. This is Talk.
Jeremy Clarkson, a pub owner, he wrote a very scathing piece in The Sun this weekend saying that reform sounds great until you ask what they actually do beyond stopping the boats.
I think what he's done for farming is fantastic. I think he's woken the country up to how blooming difficult actually being a farmer is. So I can tell you, Jeremy, there's a constructive plan for pubs that also cuts the welfare bill. I'm sure he will approve thoroughly of that. And you can tell him we're working very, very hard on a proper agricultural policy as well.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:28 is the time. Let's go straight to your calls. Let's talk to Andrew, who is in Hertfordshire. Hello, Andrew. You want to have your say on Mandelson?
Yeah. So the reality of it. Good morning. The reality of it. Good morning, Joe. The reality of it is all this noise of all of the evidence. That's white noise. What you've got to focus on is the reality.
Yeah.
Starmer. Starmer's judgment is poor. He's a manager, not a leader. Focus on Starmer.
I don't even think he's a good manager.
Yeah, I agree with you, but let's just boil it down. The process. If you look at Chris Mason, your mate, yesterday on the BBC, the first thing he said was, and I've spoken to sources close to Peter Mandelson, and they say that he didn't get any financial gain.
Yeah.
So Mandelson's got the narrative out there now,
yeah.
And you watch how it's being reported, he got no gain.
Yeah.
So let's just look at the person that put him in place. Focus on Starmer. This shows he's not fit to be Prime Minister. And then you look at the Chagos Islands. Yeah. You look at the rape gangs inquiry. You look at the way that his cabinet can't hold a woman in it. He's not fit. That's what we should focus on.
I mean, this thing, I mean, it's just the latest bit of evidence, and also that he's got a chief of staff who apparently trusts on everything, which is why when, last year when there were all these question marks about Peter Mandelson, when we knew quite a lot about his relationship with Epstein, he said he had full confidence.
Yeah, and then you look at that Sweeney. When we annihilated Boris Johnson for having a slice of cake and champagne, let's see Sweeney's phone. Let's see his personal phone. Let's see his personal WhatsApps. Let's see those now. I tell you what, people would form a mob and force them out with pitchforks from Number 10. Yeah,
I couldn't agree with you more on that, Andrew. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Elliot, who is in Bushey. And Elliot, you want to talk about Andrew?
Yeah, thank you for taking the call.
Thanks for calling, my love.
Yeah, I want to talk about something which isn't being talked about much. It's extremely serious for this country. It's very simple. Charles has got to get a grip. King Charles has got to get a grip. He's got to get his rotten brother across to the US and testify. If he doesn't, it's going to be a complete crack and a stain on the family. If you then take the fact that even Andrew Lowney, in his book, Julia, states that there was there was a cover-up by our great Queen. I'm a great monarchy supporter, but I am so disappointed from the bottom of my heart that the Queen, whose legacy we revere, if she herself, he says Lowney, police told her about Andrew's, not his sexual behaviour, but certainly his business dealings when he was Trade Commissioner.
UK Trade Envoy,
Envoy. I do beg.
There were so many question marks about.
Well, you think that Charles didn't know, Anne didn't know? This is.
I have a feeling that Charles, in particular, was lobbying his late mother and saying, "Look, for the love of God, we've got to get this guy out of public eye." I think it's got to be honest with you. I mean, they can't force Andrew to go and testify. They could just say, right, you're going to go and have to just, live on your own on your military pension. They cannot force him to testify, and he would be insane to testify. And he ain't going to do it out of the goodness of his heart, because he doesn't do anything out of the goodness of his heart.
If the royal family, rightly or wrongly, he can't force. He needs to be seen like justice. He needs to be seen as the king of this country, to get his brother out there. And this cover-up, if there was a cover-up, this is the most terrible stain, not only on the monarchy, but that will impinge upon the Commonwealth, the Church, supposed to be head of the Church of England, and our dependent territories. This thing goes much bigger than, as far as the royal family is concerned, and this country, than anyone can imagine. And as for Mandelson, he can't remember getting the money. You know what? I work in the city. I work with one of the major banks. You go to the banks, they've got stuff going back 20 years. Pull out the record.
Absolutely. And again, no, I don't recall isn't good enough. Find your bank statements, mate. That's sort of simple as that. Elliot, thank you very much indeed. Well, very interesting call. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking to journalist and broadcaster Adam Bolton, who considers himself to have been a friend of Peter Mandelson. I'm going to check whether, of course, he considers himself still to be a friend of Peter Mandelson. What does he think is going to happen? You don't want to miss that. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Anyway.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:34 is the time. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Claire Pissell is also with us, a former Conservative government advisor. You certainly on the phones, 0344 499 1000. That's the number to have yours say. Love to hear your thoughts about what my next guest has to say. He's joined us in the studio, journalist and broadcaster Adam Bolton. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
You've been, watching you for years and years, known you in the lobby in the House of Commons when you were working as Sky political editor, doyen, some would say, of the lobby. You've been, I suppose, I would say, quite supportive of Lord Peter Mandelson. You've considered him to be a friend. He came to your wedding.
Yeah, I went to his.
You went to his. You're in a friendship. Do you still consider him a friend?
Yeah, I don't believe in cancelling people, and I think you stick by people. And I can think of, people who've got into trouble. People working in this building, like Andy Coulson, for example, or politicians like Jeffrey Archer, or someone I worked for once, Jonathan Aitken. Okay. I think you can absolutely condemn and perhaps be shocked by appalled and shocked by what they've done. But at a personal level, if you've known someone as I've known Peter Mandelson for over 40 years, I'm not going to, metaphorically
oust him from your friendship.
Yeah.
Okay. He hasn't been charged with any crime. He hasn't certainly been convicted of any crime, and we need to remember that. But I have to say, the black and white evidence from the Epstein files so far, which either Peter Mandelson has not commented or he says he has no recollection, $75,000 going into his account from Jeffrey Epstein, $10,000 to his partner, husband.
I think that's acknowledged.
Okay. I said either has no recollection or okay, he's acknowledged this, but he acknowledged the 10,000. Doesn't have a recollection of the 75,000. The exchanges of emails, it would appear to be from his own private account, which was basically handing over sensitive, confidential, market-sensitive information about what was happening in terms of bailouts of banks during the economic crisis to Jeffrey Epstein, a billionaire financier who at that time, by the way, was already a convicted paedophile, been convicted and served time in prison for having solicited a 14-year-old girl for prostitution. Are you still saying do you think this is a man of good character?
No, and I never said that, and I entirely agree with what you said. If it turns out that all this is true, and we have to bear in mind that certainly in things like bank statements, Jeffrey Epstein was not above faking them or whatever.
No.
And, you know, we've had fakes done of bank statements before. Remember the Martin Bashir case, you know, so it can happen. But if on the face of it, what is revealed in the Ministry of Justice Epstein library is true, it is absolutely appalling, absolutely shocking, absolutely gobsmacking. And I don't know anyone who's thought anything otherwise. I think there are two sections to this. I mean, David Blunkett, who of course was a close ally in New Labour, has made this point that the sleaze stuff about, what Epstein did and Peter Mandelson's involvement with him and whether it's, you know, a good idea to have sleazy friends, and I don't think it is personally, is one thing. But the actual evidence that while a cabinet minister, Peter Mandelson was sending on confidential information to Jeffrey Epstein who could benefit from it is gobsmacking, shocking, and nothing anybody
and would be criminal if it has
potentially,
occurred.
if it can be
misconduct in public office.
If that can be proven, it would be criminal. And
breach of the Official Secret Act at the very basics.
I'm not so sure about that, because I think, and I've had this pointed out to me by senior civil servants.
These weren't top secure.
These were not
documents.
classified documents,
Okay.
and they were basically conversations. But I would make one point about this: that everyone is shocked by what's been revealed, but everyone has been taken in. I mean, as Danny Finkelstein points out in his column in the Times today, Peter Mandelson was employed in this building on a podcast. People are now blaming Keir Starmer for taking a risk.
But
Gordon Brown, one of the men who's stirring the pot, was the person who brought Peter Mandelson back into
and gave him the
peerage.
Okay, but again,
this is a collective thing.
Oh, absolutely, it's a collective thing. But here's the thing: you say everyone's shocked. I'm not shocked. We always knew Peter Mandelson was a wrong one. We knew from early days when he had a 40 grand salary as an MP and bought a £475,000 Notting Hill mansion. I knew from early days that he had lied to the then editor of the Evening Standard, Max Hastings, and claimed it was an inheritance from his mother. Completely, he lied on his mortgage document. He lied to the Prime Minister.
Boris Johnson lied, and I've
never defended that.
He became Prime Minister. I mean,
I've never. No. There's a difference, Adam Bolton. There's a difference, and I know you've also been talking about Donald Trump is implicated in various things. Here's the thing: if
you believe these documents, Donald Trump's done much worse than Peter Mandelson.
People choose to vote for is a matter for them. When a Prime Minister chooses, whether it's Gordon Brown, whether it's Keir Starmer, chooses to appoint someone to a role where they're in the public employ, where the public don't get to say, then it is absolutely a matter of their judgment. Do you think? I mean, you're saying there's a question mark for Gordon Brown, bringing him back for the tail end of his government.
He was like the Prime Minister today, Sir Keir Starmer. He was desperate at the time, and he thought that Peter Mandelson could bring some magic into his government, just as Keir Starmer thought, and I think correctly as far as doing his job, and I'm one of those journalists, the many journalists who said it, that although it was a high-risk appointment bringing back Peter Mandelson, he would do a good job sucking up to Trump and getting a trade deal. And all the evidence is that in his 6 months he did that.
And I said quite the opposite, that it wasn't worth the risk and that he was damaged goods.
Yeah, but that's what a risk is. It might pay off, it might not pay off.
And it was it's worked out really well, hasn't it?
Exactly, it's exploded
but
all over everybody.
But it was always going to explode all over everybody. And the question right now is, and again, we've got this, we've had this humble address to the Commons and the Tories trying to get all this information, is what exactly did both the Prime Minister and indeed his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, know about the close links between Mandelson and Epstein at the time? What vetting was done? We know from Yvette Cooper, since she stated in the Commons, that the full vetting was not carried out before he was appointed. It does appear that Peter Mandelson kind of leaked that he'd been appointed to the job before he'd actually been formally vetted.
You are being, if I may say so, wise after the event. Right?
I'm sorry, I was criticising this the day one.
No, wait a minute. You said it was always clear this was going to explode. This has only exploded because of the parallel issues over the Epstein files in the United States and the big dumps
I raised it over his relationship with the Chinese.
Yeah, all right. Peter Mandelson did not know that there was going to be these dumps of information and he didn't know what was in it. Now, I don't think that justifies him putting himself forward for this job. He should not have done it.
He didn't know his wrongdoing would come out, so it was OK for him to apply for a job to be our top diplomat.
Politics is strewn with people like that. Absolutely strewn
and
with people
okay?
like that. No, it's bad. It's just that, you know, it's the human condition.
You just said it's not a good idea to have sleazy friends, but you're quite happy to have a sleazy friend.
No, I'm not quite
happy. It was
happy.
OK as long as no one knew about it, and now we know about it.
No,
but the point is,
you how the world is. And
what we knew when he was appointed.
Peter Mandelson betrayed his friends, his political allies, and everybody when he put himself forward for that ambassador's job. He knew what had gone on. He should not have done it.
What was already in the public domain and what must have already been known by our security services, by the police, the basic level of vetting for that job would have revealed that he was totally unsuitable for that job, and that the previous resignations were of a different league over what he was possibly alleged to have been, to have witnessed and to have covered up. Now, he can play the gay card and say, I'm gay, I didn't know anything. No one believes that.
That's all very well, but you're wrong, because, as you say, it was known that Peter Mandelson had this friendship. It was known about his past and his previous residence, and he was brought back by numerous people in numerous roles over that time. So this is not a kind of unique failure by government. Yes, you can argue that there should be tighter intrusion and tighter type of vetting. I mean, I personally...
There wasn't proper vetting, we know that.
No, I personally am appalled, just very simply. I'm very appalled that on their official BlackBerry, or I suppose now people have phones, that a minister can be sent stuff and can then just simply flip it on to someone else. I just don't think that should happen. And certainly I don't think they should be able to do that without someone scrutinising...
You say that... Can I come back to you?
What's on
you're saying that other prime ministers had appointed him. Look, you know, Tony Blair appointed him twice, didn't he? He appointed him to Trade Commissioner. He'd appointed him after he'd been...
Neil Kinnock hired him as the head of
He's been hired by every Labour Prime Minister in the last 40 years. But here's the thing. When Keir Starmer appointed him in 2024, that was after the full extent of the horrors of what Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and others had done. But he was exposed, and he was already long dead. 2019. This was all. We knew everything. We knew an awful lot then.
Lots of people.
His close relationship was well known at that point.
There are lots of people throughout public life, certainly in the United States, who had close associations with Jeffrey Epstein, who continue to
that's up to them.
Be straightforward.
That's up to them.
And what's more, they are mostly people, including Donald Trump, who are in suspicion.
That's up to them. And the American public can vote for him or not vote for him. That's got sod all to do with me.
No, I'm just saying to you that it was not considered, having been a acquaintance of Jeffrey Epstein.
He wasn't an acquaintance, it was his best pal.
No, well, we didn't know that at the time.
There were photographs
those
of
documents
them
were not,
shopping together. They were not vague acquaintances. We know Peter Mandelson lied. We also know the vetting was not carried out beforehand. Was it a misjudgment on Keir Starmer's part, and does it betray poor leadership?
It was a gamble.
I didn't ask that. Was it a misjudgment to appoint him as the representative of the British state in America?
With hindsight, but at the time,
was it a misjudgment?
At the time, it was a risk, it was a gamble.
I didn't ask you that.
I didn't
ask you that. Was it a misjudgment?
It's exactly the same as hiring someone like Cummings, who had a long record. He was hired. He also exploded on the Prime Minister of the time.
He didn't have a record of being busy mates with a paedophile.
No, he had a record of breaking COVID restrictions that he was putting on the nation. Yes, it was a mistake. Should he have been trusted?
I didn't ask you that.
It was a gamble.
No,
it was a risk.
A misjudgment.
At the time.
Why are you answering a different question?
Well, because you're asking the wrong question.
I'm sorry. With all due respect, Adam, I know you've done this for years as well. I choose my questions.
You're saying, was it a misjudgment?
You can answer yes or no.
I am saying...
Yes or no.
No, it's not a yes or no question.
No, it's not a reasonable question.
It was a risk. And at the time that Peter was appointed, some of the people who knew Peter said, this is a brilliant appointment. Other people
Most people.
Close to Keir Starmer.
Most people.
Actually said this is a mistake.
Many in public life, many journalists, many commentators, including me, said at the time this was a mistake and he was the wrong man for the job.
You are just being self-righteous.
Nothing with hindsight.
This is
Nothing
not,
with hindsight.
This is not about
He's
Keir
a
Starmer.
nasty little piece of work. He is a wrong-un. He's a proven liar. He was best mates with a paedophile. He thought that was okay. He didn't believe the girl who'd been solicited for prostitution. And you're happy to be mates with him. I don't think he's fit for public office.
Nor do I. So what we argue
But
about.
I'll go for dinner with him.
All I'm saying is that Peter Mandelson had professionally something to offer, and nobody knew the extent of his betrayal of that political job, and you cannot blame the Prime Minister of that.
To be shocked that he lied? Oh no, a proven liar has lied to me. Wouldn't you carry out proper vetting?
We are both in the journalism business, and I think you should be very careful dismissing everybody as a proven liar.
I mean, he resigned twice for having lied.
No, he didn't. Actually,
Undo your passport. Well, he was found to have done nothing wrong.
The second time, he was actually exonerated in an official inquiry. Well, he was.
Yeah, well, he'll probably be exonerated in an official inquiry now.
Well, you would be lying if you said that he was convicted the second time, because he wasn't.
But I didn't say he was convicted. Well,
you said he was guilty and he was exonerated.
We know he's a liar.
He was exonerated.
We know he's a liar. He's lied about... He lies 4 times before breakfast.
This is an interesting point. I've been a journalist for 40 years, and as I have said on the record, in my political dealings about political business, what is going on, what is happening, Peter Mandelson happens to be one of the rare people, in fact the only one I can think of offhand, and it includes Prime Ministers, who has not, to my face, told me lies.
You just don't know whether he has or he hasn't.
No, I do, because I know what happened subsequently.
Did you? OK, you're such good mates with him. When he was appointed to the job as UK ambassador to Washington, did you say to him, or have you? I think you've spoken to him since. Have you said to him? Did you tell everyone? He's admitted he didn't tell everything to the Prime Minister. Was he the right person for the job given his close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Did he tell you how close he'd been to Jeffrey Epstein?
No, of course not.
So he did lie to you.
No, wait a minute.
He did lie to you.
Wait a minute. It turns out that he lied by omission.
Oh, God!
No, he did, because he did not.
My husband didn't come in the house, and he was. I didn't ask him if he'd had an affair that night, but he didn't tell me. So that was
Listen,
okay.
Peter Mandelson didn't tell anybody about his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. I know lots of people who've been friendly with Peter Mandelson. None of us knew about what was going on with Jeffrey Epstein, let alone that it appears money changed hands. And certainly not that he was breaching government secrets. And no one could have known he managed to cover it up. So in that sense, by what he did and what he was not open about, he misled everybody. But that's very different from actually coming out and straightforward telling you black is white, which, for example, Alistair Campbell did on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's true. Does Keir Starmer survive this? Does Morgan McSweeney, his chief of staff, survive this?
I think it's more a question, frankly, it will be stuck on the government. There'll be people who will do it enthusiastically. And someone said yesterday that Peter Mandelson has been in at the kill of 2 Labour election defeats 42 years apart. And it looks very, very unlikely that Labour, given what's going on, stands a chance of winning the next election.
Brilliant. It's been fantastic to have you in. My advice to you people, find someone who loves you and is as loyal to you as this man is to Peter Mandelson. He's going to shout at me as soon as the mic goes off.
I'm not being loyal.
We're going to have to go.
I've absolutely admitted that he's done all these wrong things.
Adam, I'm going to have to go to break. You know timings on the radio. 10:51 is the time. This is Talk.
Jeremy Clarkson, a pub owner, he wrote a very scathing piece in The Sun this weekend saying that reform sounds great until you ask what they actually do beyond stopping the boats.
I think what he's done for farming is fantastic. I think he's woken the country up to how blooming difficult actually being a farmer is. So I can tell you, Jeremy, there's a constructive plan for pubs that also cuts the welfare bill. I'm sure he will approve thoroughly of that. And you can tell him we're working very, very hard on a proper agricultural policy as well.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, that was lively, wasn't it, folks? 10:53 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall's still with me, sat in the studio throughout that. That must have been a bit awkward for you. Former Conservative Government Advisor. Adam Bolton, again, I've known Adam Bolton for years. I actually consider him a friend, I have to say. Yeah. Known him for many, many, many years. Absolutely superb political editor at Sky News for many, many years, and still a broadcaster. But I was genuinely shocked when I saw him on telly yesterday, being really defending in lots of ways Mandelson and certainly his appointment. You know, and he would not. It was really interesting, Claire, yesterday, just now. He would not he would not say that it was a misjudgment by the Prime Minister to have appointed him. It was a risk worth taking. We were discussing on this. Back me up, folks. Back me up online and on air, saying that it was not a risk worth taking. This guy is unfit for public office. He shouldn't be appointed.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, it's really interesting that he's got such a strong level of feeling towards somebody that has essentially let him down enormously as a friend, let alone as a political colleague.
And he says that he doesn't believe in cancelling people, and I'm with him on that. And I don't, you know, I've never been of the view that I should, you know, not be friends with someone we don't share political views or people, you know, things go wrong. I've got to be honest with you. I mean, I have worked with two people who've been convicted of paedophilia. Yeah, not weirdly. Never been in contact with them since that day. Sure. I've never found that difficult. And the only friendship I've broken off over political views is actually a long-standing friend of my old colleague Yvonne Ridley, and she's been on the show quite a few times. And I messaged her to say, genuinely, her views. I mean, I think the stuff that she spouts on social media it's not a difference of opinion on Gaza. You can have a different opinion on issues like that and Israel. I think, as I've said, I think what you post is anti-Semitic, and I simply I wouldn't be friends with someone who was posting, you know, any racist, you know, if you genuinely feel that way, I just don't think you're a good person. I just don't want to be friends with you. I think there are times when you do cancel a friendship if they do something awful or have horrible views or say horrible. I'm sorry, I think you do. I admire, again, find someone who loves you as much as he does, but he seems to think that it was right to go, that he may well face criminal investigation, but that somehow no one knew any of this when he was appointed in 24.
And I find that bit probably the most difficult, because Peter Mandelson had history. This was not the first time he'd been caught out in untruths. We all know that. It's been happening a long time. And for Gordon Brown, I really don't like the fact everybody's now sainting Gordon Brown for getting the police involved in September of last year, when he was the one who appointed him, even though he hated him, and the feeling was mutual.
I feel that what's going on right now in the Labour Party is actually this was going on in the lobby when I was a junior journalist on the Evening Standard, right, in politics, and it was called the TBGBs, and this was Tony Blair, Gordon Brown. This is when Gordon Brown would do a budget, and literally the day before, Tony Blair and his people would be going, "What's in the budget?" And Gordon would be like, no. And this guy, Charlie Whelan, remember Charlie Whelan? And Charlie Whelan worked for Gordon Brown, and he would be briefing journalists on one side of the office, and on the other side, you'd get the Alistair Campbells, and then you got Peter Mandelson briefing, you know, the Tony Blair side of things. And there was this ongoing battle. There is no love lost between these people, and there's no doubt at all that Gordon Brown brought Peter Mandelson back because I need somebody who can operate, who can help me stay this sinking ship. But then we understand from these emails with Epstein that basically Mandelson was trying to boot Gordon Brown out, as it wasn't until after he'd already lost the election, and then they were doing these negotiations with the Lib Dems, and basically everyone made it clear no one is willing to work with Gordon Brown. He's going to have to go. Bye smelly, one of the emails. But I mean, I feel like we are in the middle of a very, very vicious, long-standing family war.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
This is the Labour Party at war with itself.
And I think it will do for the PM. I really, really do, because you only have to look back over history. Profumo brought down a government, and this is worse.
Why?
The Minister of War at the time lied to Parliament, and that's what did for him. He had the affair with Christine Keeler, yada, yada, yada.
Probably giving her secrets which were going to the Russians.
And that's the point. But he lied about it, and that's what saw him off. I think this one is worse. This is connections with a known paedophile. This is monetary transactions. This is potentially leaking sensitive market information across...
Well, and also it's how much was known by... How much should have been...
Exactly.
How was known or should have reasonably been known
Yes.
for proper vetting had taken place by the government? Or was there just such desperation from Morgan McSweeney to get his mate... his mentor into government, so into that role. And again, Peter Manns keeps saying he had no financial benefit, well, apart from the 75 grand and the 10 grand to his now husband, but also then getting a job, a multi-million-pound job afterwards. But again, every single job on that basis, you know, you're getting helped, aren't you?
Yeah, of course you are. So it's all of the indirect help and assistance that made him into a financially well-off individual.
Yeah, absolutely. It is absolutely. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your reaction to Adam Bolton on that. I wanted to get him on because I am flabbergasted by you know, people sort of saying, you know, we just didn't know then. You go back, you look at how many people, politicians, journalists, people who'd worked with Peter Manns were saying, you shouldn't appoint this guy. It's going to blow up in your face. It's blown up in the Prime Minister's face and the country's face. Because I'm sorry, he was representing Britain. That is a diplomatic role. You need, you know what? You need to be whiter than white in that role. And he was blacker than black. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. More on Andrew as well. Up next, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to have more chat with you, more chat with Claire Pearce. We're also going to be talking about the National 10-Year Cancer Plan with the top specialist, Carol Sikora. That's coming up. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's already a bit of a rip-roaring show today, if I say so myself. 3 minutes past 11 o'clock is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, thank you so much for your company. If you missed anything from the show, if you missed my last interview in the last 20 minutes with Adam Bolton, who's a prominent journalist and broadcaster, and hugely successful and absolutely brilliant journalist. I've known him for many years in Westminster, very well connected. Him basically, I think to all intents and purposes defending Peter Mandelson and certainly appearing to defend the appointment of him as our ambassador by Keir Starmer. Absolutely extraordinary radio, if I say so myself. Do go back and have a look. It'll be on our YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. If you hit subscribe, you never have to miss a thing in the future. We're going to be talking more about Peter Mandelson, possibly definitely facing a criminal investigation, possibly Prince Andrew, as was, facing a criminal investigation as well over allegations of a second woman being basically trafficked to him for sex at Royal Lodge. But the allegations against Peter Mandelson are certainly looking very serious. And if any of those emails are actually legitimate and genuine, that appear to have been sent by him, disclosing absolutely confidential government and market matter during the time of the bailouts of the financial crash in 2009-2010 to the paedophile, already then convicted paedophile billionaire financier, best pal of his, then we are looking at certainly charges being brought. We're also going to be talking about the two-child benefit gap. Bit of confusion last night in the Commons over whether the Reform Party actually supports that or not, but certainly two of their MPs, one Robert Jenrick and one Suella Braverman, ended up voting with the government to scrap it, even though Reform are now apparently in favour of keeping it. We'll try to get to the bottom of that later. And a new study claims that trans-identifying men who compete as in women's sport, those athletes, we call them cheats. Apparently they've got no physical advantage over women, according to a study printed in the BMJ. I'm going to tell you right now, the academics who printed that study are idiots because they clearly never met a man or a woman. But there we are. We'll talk about all of that. I'd love to hear your thoughts, in particular, on what is happening today in terms of we've got P&Qs in an hour's time. We'll be taking those exchanges between the Prime Minister and Kemi Badenoch live. I cannot believe she'll go on anything other than the issue of the appointment, with the poor judgment, the lack of vetting for putting Peter Mandelson in the job as our man in Washington, as our US ambassador. But she's also, on behalf of her party, has tabled what's called a humble address to the Commons, and that is basically to ask the King to ensure that the government publishes all the relevant documents to the Mandelson appointment. Who wrote what, who said what in meetings, what minutes, what vetting was done, everything. Well, I want to know, should Keir Starmer publish everything he knew about Mandelson's links with Epstein when he appointed him as US ambassador? Everyone says we know a lot now. We knew a lot then. Security services probably knew all of it. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us at Talk TV on X. And also, don't forget, of course, calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost £1, standard network rate message. Joining me in the studio still is Claire Pissell, former Conservative Government Advisor. Thanks once again for joining us. We're going to go to a guest who we had to shuffle from the last half hour because the conversation with Adam Bolton was too interesting, I thought, explosive to leave. And so I didn't want to limit our time because it's talking about the National Cancer Plan. But, do you think that today, this is kind of going to be a key moment for Keir Starmer? Do you think, does he actually survive this? Because, again, we were just talking the last time, it's often the strangest things that bring prime ministers down.
It is. It's kind of the thing that you almost least expect. All of the big things that go on in governments, it doesn't matter who's prime minister, you think is going to take someone down, and it's the smallest sort of nail in the coffin, if you like, that will do it. And I think this is it. Because you've got his judgment being called into question about why on earth would you put Peter Mandelson, why would you allow that nomination to go ahead to be the highest ranking diplomat in the world, basically, representing your country. But also, why does he not admit that there have been mistakes made? We haven't heard anything at all. It's just been absolutely silent from the Prime Minister.
Absolutely.
And I think that he needs to be able to be held to account. And I think the I think that his own party are going to do that for him.
Yeah, we shall wait and see what happens this afternoon. Just to let you know, just some breaking news. There has been what's called a very serious incident on the campus of De Montfort University in Leicester. Some reports, I have to stress, these are unconfirmed at this time, but some reports that we are looking at, I think, possibly a triple stabbing on the campus of De Montfort University. That is unconfirmed, but certainly many police at the scene. It has been confirmed by the university that we are looking at what they call a very serious incident on campus, but we do not have confirmation of that yet, but we'll keep you up to date on any developments we do get. Right now, let's talk about a big announcement from the government today. They were hoping that's what we'd be talking about rather than their woes over poor judgment in appointing ambassadors to the US, and that is the NHS National Cancer Plan. It's already been delayed, published today by Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, and he is hoping that, planning that earlier cancer diagnosis, faster treatment will ensure that 3/4 of patients are surviving cancer for at least 5 years by 2035, and that we'll be up to the standards, frankly, of many similar countries where, frankly, if you do get cancer, you've got a much better chance of staying alive. Let's talk about this with Professor Carol Sikora. He's Medical Director of Rutherford Cancer Centres and a leading cancer specialist. Very good morning to you, Carol, and thank you once again for just moving a little bit later so we could get more time with you.
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning. Look, this cancer plan sounds great on the fact that, of course, it exposes just how bad things are right now. So let's talk about where we are right now.
It's bad. The plan is great. It's aspirational. I can't see how it can be implemented with the current infrastructure of the NHS. That's the only problem. You know, there was a plan in 2020 that came out, a national cancer plan and an NHS plan. And that actually had slightly different metrics. So the metrics are being fiddled. That one said you should be starting from diagnosis to treatment should take less than 28 days. Yeah. And by doing that, 75% of patients would be early stage cancer rather than 50% early stage cancer, which is what it is now. Yeah. The real thing we have to understand, there's nothing wrong with cancer treatment. The doctors, the nurses, the radiographers, fantastic in the end, and the system works. But you have to get to the front of the queue, and that is a struggle. When you've got 7.4 million people waiting for something, some of those are bound to have cancer, undiagnosed.
And especially after the shutting down of the NHS to lots of these screenings and diagnoses, particularly for cancer. And you were warning, I think it was as early as April 2020 on my show, that we are going to be seeing people younger than those who are dying of COVID on average, dying of cancer because they are not getting diagnosed.
Exactly. And, it's a fairly simple thing to deal with. I mean, it doesn't require an awful lot of money. We have to use the diagnostic systems we have longer hours. Car parks are empty in most hospitals on a Sunday. Yeah. Why? Yeah. They should be full. They should be teeming. Sure, you need to get staff in, you need more staff. Fine, we accept that. But we have the ability to do it. If we take the target in this current plan, which is the existing target, diagnosis to treatment, 62 days.
So 2 months, yeah.
And at the moment, less than 2/3 of the patients are actually getting 2 months treatment. They're waiting longer.
And also, by the way, when we're talking about someone going to the doctor, getting referred to a consultant, that will often take, let's be honest, that will often take a couple of months to get that appointment. That might be cancelled a couple of times or changed and you can't go. And then you turn up to that appointment, you're then sent for your diet, you're then sent for the scans. So again, that can often be weeks or even months. You then get to that point, and at that point, then, even then, you're not getting your treatment starting within 2 months. I know this from a friend of mine who had breast cancer and who was waiting months and months. And genuinely, other friends, we were saying, we will all club together and pay for you to get private treatment because every week that goes by is more likely that you will die. It is that simple. You survive if they catch it early and they treat it early, and you don't if they catch it late or they treat it late. It's just that simple.
Yeah, exactly. And, the target in Poland is 7 days from diagnosis to treatment.
Poland. Yeah, I mean, a very, very wealthy country in the G7. I mean, God. And how do they manage it? How do they manage it?
They're more efficient. Everything's much more efficient. They give the local professionals control of the problem. In other words, if you're running a diagnostic service and you say, I want this done within 7 days, I want to get this patient to there in 7 days, you give the people the problem. You don't have a committee that tries to reorganize the structure, looking at diversity with women's toilets and men's toilets.
Net zero targets and yeah. Well, this is the thing. I was looking at, like, I know there's, West Street and the Health Secretary's out and about, and he's been questioned about, how are you going to do this? And the head of National Cancer Research has said, look, plan, it's a great plan, but plans don't save people's lives. Delivery does. And a lot of it comes down to money. You need to hire more people. You need to have, the scanners and the diagnostics teams, working on Saturdays and Sundays and not just Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. With 2 hours for lunch. You need to be a 24. People have cancer 24/7. It needs to be a 24/7 service. But hiring these people, radiographers, they're on about sort of 31k, going up to about high 40, in fact 48k for the top band, most experienced. Let's get rid of a few HR people and hire some more radiographers, for goodness sake.
We've got to do something to incentivise people, especially if you want them to come in at unsocial hours, which we do, because the equipment's expensive. And if you look at other countries, how they do it, it's the expectation here that delays are the norm in the system. Once, as I tell everyone, once you're at the front of the queue, everything's great. The quality of care, the drugs, the radiation machine.
But you've got to get there. But this is the thing, as you say, it's the low expectations, isn't it? And this is the poverty of low expectations. We have a target where you will get, after all the processes, which could take months, to getting diagnosed and definitely knowing you need treatment, that a huge number of people aren't even getting treated within 2 months. But the 2-month target itself, I would say, is immoral.
It was going to be 28 days, but it was realised it couldn't be met. That's the truth. And so the programme's reasonable. If you look at it, you say, well, there's nothing wrong with this. I'm paying expenses to parents of children that are having cancer treatment. Now, who cares? But there's obvious thing to do. Why not? For everybody.
But especially because children, and this was announced this week, because children, they have to go to specialist units. They won't be at their local hospital. They can often have to travel, a 200-mile round trip. Of course, people have to cover petrol and train fares. And
even the most right-wing fascists wouldn't argue with that as a reasonable thing to do. But I'm afraid it's not going to change the real problem in cancer treatment in this country, which is speed to diagnosis to treatment.
Okay, where's the best country for us to get cancer, out of interest?
France and Germany. They're very quick.
Are they spending a lot more? I know, they have completely different health service spending, but are they spending a lot more that would account for that?
There's no more spend. The model country for us, I guess, is Denmark, because it has a very socialist system, like our NHS. It's almost no private care whatsoever, and it works. It works very well. Now, I think we should look at that model. Trying to change the NHS funding model would take forever. We haven't got time for that for the next generation of cancer patients. What we have to do is look at a model that we can just replicate simply in our structure. And it's all about getting key staff to make decisions locally to move things along.
The thing for me is, look, I'm very, 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 very lucky to have private healthcare now. I didn't for most of my life. And I wouldn't be without it now. After a health scare in my family, it would not be. I consider it now to be not a luxury. It's like, because I was so horrified by some of the NHS care we have had. I've had some great NHS care, had some horrible NHS care, but I'm not willing to take the risk with my own family. But I'm in a lucky position. But it is extraordinary. The reality is, if you're well enough off to afford private health care, you've got a much greater chance of living longer and surviving cancer than if you are poor, not sharp-elbowed, not someone like me who will call and nag for an appointment, even to the NHS. Again, that's immoral. I think that's immoral. That I could buy my family living longer, or me living longer, and someone else who can't afford it. We were told the NHS was supposed to make us all equal.
It raises a very interesting point that lower socioeconomic people have poorer cancer results, even from the NHS, which is free at the point of care. If they're buying hamburgers and chips in a shop, we won't mention any names of shops that sell hamburgers and chips, they make it good for everybody. Everybody's welcome, served as quickly as possible and moved out. And there's a manager there sorting things out. We don't have that sort of concept in the NHS. We have committees that try and make things up and say nice, comforting words. In today's cancer plan, a lot of comforting words. You know, I was brought up as a Catholic, and at the Catholic Church, they have comfortable words that you, in Latin, in my generation, and it's almost like that in the NHS.
But it's not necessarily going to say more or less. Well, I mean, like, let's hope it works. But it's about money, but it's also about organisation. Where there's a will, where there's a way. Professor Carol Sikora, always so good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Claire Pearsall, listening to all of that. I mean, this is really depressing. I know, you know, everyone was saying, oh, you know, your lot, they were in charge for 14 years. This all went pretty, you know, badly wrong under your lot. We know, you know, well, OK, there was austerity. There had to be austerity. There would have been with the Labourers in charge in 2010, or the Tories. But, you know, NHS funding went up, but it didn't go up as much. But yet we were an older, fatter population. We were going to be getting more cancer. There wasn't enough cancer specialists hired. I mean, you know, a plague on all your houses, really.
Well, I think it is. I don't think any government manages the NHS well at all. Because
maybe government shouldn't be in charge of healthcare.
I think that is a really good idea, is to take it out of government control, because all you're doing is looking at it from what is your political capital to be made from it, rather than what is the best need of the country that you're serving.
But if you're able to go to Poland, I think Romania as well, to go and get your health treatment and not stay in Britain, supposedly one of the leading economies of the world, because you've got a better chance of living there. Well, surely that's got to make you think this is not working. We're laughing, but it is laughable and obscene at the same time.
Yeah, it is. And I was recently in Iceland, and one of the big headlines on a Wednesday morning was 80 people had to go to A&E through falling on the ice. OK, and I just went, oh, well. And this was enormous for them. They'd never seen this many people throughout the entire day. And do you know what? They treated every single one of them and got them out and seen with x-rays and all the rest of it. But they were sort of saying, we've never had this many people. And I just think, you get that in an hour over here.
I fell on the ice last month. And this is such a big story, because I do just worry that we really are just not, we are not on top of this. No. Your experiences of the NHS cancer treatment, again, I'm a serious friend of mine, just really relaxed about, you know, she's breast cancer, and it's just sort of, you know, my operation's in 2 months. And I'm going, are you kidding me? Every 2 weeks, I think your chances of dying go up by something like 10%. I mean, you need to get in and get the treatment. And they put you on this kind of waiting list for the waiting list, for the waiting list, for the waiting list. And people die as a result. It's just that simple. You know, and also here's the thing, we've got rough, you know, 2,000 or 3,000 lovely young teens who've got straight AA levels in maths and science subjects, who want to study to be medics, and they can't get into university because all those places are going to people who pay 3 times the fees from China and India. And we're not training up our own. We need more doctors, we need more radiographers, we need more people. Let's train up our own people. And people think, oh, that costs a lot of money. It doesn't cost as much as the cost of these people dying in their 50s, all the tax they would pay, the cost of their lives, the damage to the damage to their families, to their children. This is what a civilised country should do. The idea that we should have any aim that only this percentage of people should survive, or that you know, we're going to try and hit the 2 months target, that's obscene. And we shouldn't have such low standards, and that's why we end up with such poor treatment. Let's also, I mean, related to this, Reform said they would, big announcement from Nigel Farage yesterday, though it kind of ended up being a whole conversation about Mandelson. Reform would scrap Labour's plans to cut the drink driving limit. This is the Welsh First Minister who's blamed Netflix for pub closures, not the 20-mile-per-hour zone, not all the drink driving laws, none of that, but basically people sit at home and watch Netflix, and that's why they're not going to the pub.
I mean, but yes, some people probably do. But I think also a lot of it's to do with the price of going out. And evening out is now very, very expensive. And, you know, I'm quite fortunate that we can do this occasionally. But you do look at the bill at the end of the night and just think, wow. I
rarely don't go, how much?
Exactly. I've paid it. I've done all the, you know, those things and left a tip for the waitress. But wow, it is really, really expensive. So yes, you've got prices have gone up. I think that also people don't necessarily have the time anymore. I work very strange hours, as do you. Sometimes, 8 o'clock in the evening, I don't want to be out. I think, I want to be in my pyjamas.
Or it's raining raining. Yeah, exactly. This miserable weather. Oh, I've got all of this blue sky out there. Where did that?
Yeah.
I don't remember that. It looks lovely. Anyway, 11:21 is the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything we've been talking about. Manderson, Prince Andrew. Got much more to talk about with Prince Andrew. Sorry, as was Prince Andrew. We've also got lots more top guests coming as well. We're going to get to your calls up next. 0344 499 1000. Your reaction to, well, not if you want to get in touch about Adam Bolton and my conversation, but also your thoughts just on, should Keir Starmer release all these documents? And frankly, do you think Keir Starmer's going to survive this? Because it was such a misjudgment to appoint Manderson to the job of being our top diplomat in the world. And a lot of us were saying it at the time. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Jeremy Clarkson, a pub owner, he wrote a very scathing piece in The Sun this weekend saying that reform sounds great until you ask what they actually do beyond stopping the boats.
I think what he's done for farming is fantastic. I think he's woken the country up to how blooming difficult actually being a farmer is. So I can tell you, Jeremy, there's a constructive plan for pubs that also cuts the welfare bill. I'm sure he will approve thoroughly of that. And you can tell him we're working very, very hard on a proper agricultural policy as well.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. 11:24 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to your calls coming in about, people's attitudes to Peter Manderson and also actually the conversation we've just had about cancer as well. Tarquin is in London. Tarquin, what do you want to talk about?
Julia, I think you did a marvellous job holding your very difficult to hold a friendship with Adam there. But I think you did a very fine job at trying to be as impartial as you possibly could, given the fact
I don't try and be impartial. When did I do that?
Well, I think was he in the studio with you? Or was he on the Zoom? Because you sounded like he was next to you in the room. I don't think he was. But I mean,
he was. He was sitting opposite me. Yeah.
Well, was it right? Well, the thing is that I think Adam actually he sort of hoisted by his own petard there. He said lying by omission, as if he was condoning that, and you pulled him up on it, and he just rushed all over it, didn't he?
But it is. It's the same as as I said. If I don't actually ask my husband, were you having sex with another woman who's not your wife last night, and if I don't ask him, so he's never told me, then it's okay.
Can you imagine all of the Nazi generals at Nuremberg going, well, we didn't know. They were, oh, well, that's all right, then you can go home. I mean, pathetic.
It is. I mean, there is an element where, these allegations and the criminal investigation now, we'll see what happens, of the actual, of basically, betraying, government secrets and market-sensitive information to his billionaire paedophile friend. There are big question marks about that. I'm very surprised if charges were not brought on that relation. But in terms of the stuff that was known at the time when Keir Starmer appointed him, Adam Bolton's argument is a friend of Peter Manderson. It's like, this is all hindsight. But it wasn't. Politicians were saying it at the time in the Commons. We were saying it on air. I think callers were saying it. This is a bad appointment. This will blow up in your face. And his idea is, well, we didn't know there were going to be all these files, and Manderson should have told the Prime Minister there was a load more. But since he has no recollection of anything, I don't know how he could have. But that's just not a defence, is it?
It's not. I mean, Adam Bolton, as a private company with Sky at the time, he won't have been subject to the Official Secrets Act. I think Mandelson would have been, and I think that takes it to an entirely different league. Because the thing is that the bubble of Westminster, of which you've been on the edge of observing for all.
I was inside for a while.
Yeah. I think the thing is that what they forget, these public servants, is that they should be the height of probity, and when they're doing what they're doing, it is a tantamount to high treason because they're betraying the state. If this had happened during World War II, we could have called Mandelson Lord Haw-Haw.
I genuinely, I was saying yesterday, and I think so. I think it's atrocious. It does sound like these documents that were forwarded, these memos and things, they were not covered by the Official Secrets Act. But I mean, I'm trying to think genuinely. In my work contract, if I just got an email from bosses about something that was about, I don't know, some business plan, or I knew about it, if I forwarded that to someone who could financially benefit from it, even if I couldn't, I would expect to be sacked, and quite rightly so.
Indeed, and in the financial sector, as you well know, with corporate governance rules, it's the same in the corporate sector. I mean, that is like segregation of duties, conflict of interest. There's all loads of different laws in place.
There's just so much wrong here. I find it extraordinary. But again, I mean, I don't know why people are surprised that Peter Mandelson lies. We know that. It's on record. Tarkin, couldn't agree with you more. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Let's go to some of your texts and tweets, because I'm asking you about, should Keir Starmer publish everything he knew about Mandelson's links with Epstein when he appointed him as US ambassador? This is a crucial thing. Like, loads of this is, people say, like Adam Bolt was saying, we're shocked. Not shocked. I'm really not shocked. This is exactly what I thought was going on. And we knew a lot of this. There's no way our security services didn't know of this. Not a chance. Mike says he should indeed, but we all know it'll never happen. Starmer is a pathological liar. Starmer is a callous, self-centred lowlife. Starmer should resign immediately. Wow. Mike's not a Starmer fan. Helen says if he doesn't and more damaging things come to light, then he will be finished. More damaging things will come to light. Neil says he should resign is what he should do. Larry says absolutely. The shock felt by the electorate and the general public at the wrong and being appointed ambassador in the first place was a kick in the balls. John said yes, he should. Didn't he promise transparency? Oh, he did. Even without a man who has been sacked so many times is a stupid hire. Diane says, what's the point? He's based his entire life and career on lying. He knows no other way. And Ken says, why is this even a question? If Starmer had any integrity, he would want to publish everything. Very good point. Let's also take a call from Ingrid, who is in Preston. Ingrid, you wanted to follow up on our conversation with Carol Sakura about the National 10-Year Cancer Plan. What did you want to say?
I just had to come on to say that I've been going through waiting for a cancer diagnosis now since August last year. And it's just been one long battle after another to try and get through from the next stage to the next stage.
Do you mind me asking what kind of cancer? Feel free not to answer if you don't want to.
I can't answer because they don't know where the primary source is.
Which is particularly worrying.
Just a bit, yes, because, I listen to Dr. Sakura and, all the time they're saying each week makes a difference, and I've been sort of waiting for so long.
So you went to the GP and said, I think there's something wrong.
I went to the GP in the beginning of July. I didn't really get an awful lot of support there. They did a few tests, but in the end, I went to a private GP in August.
Yeah.
And she said, I think you need to get privately get a scan done urgently.
Yeah.
So I went the next day, urgent scan, paid for it myself, and it said there was a mass detected of probable malignant on my ureter, basically.
Yeah.
And taken from there, I was referred to different departments, and nobody's been able to find it. I've had different scans.
So then you're not just getting letters and referrals. You're actually having.
No, I'm getting them, but then it's a couple of weeks before you get the results.
Well, that's the thing. You wait weeks for an appointment, and then you wait weeks for results, and then you wait weeks for the appointment to discuss So each thing takes a month or two.
It does. Oh. And then also it seems to appear now that I'm going to go back full circle to where I started off, where they said they didn't think it was. They now think it might be. But I have had it confirmed. It's that I have got cancer cells in the lymph nodes, but they just don't know where it's coming from.
That is such a worry. I
mean, my point is really it is bad, and I think everybody's got to just keep. If you get into this position, you've just got to keep on keep on at them.
Got to be sharp-elbowed. You've got to be the squeaky wheel. Look, if you don't mind,
horrible.
can you leave your number and I'll give Carol a call and ask his advice and see if there's anything that we can do.
Yeah.
Would that be okay?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, my darling. Thank you for calling in. I'll be in touch. Again, I can't promise anything, but just if there's any advice he could give us, that I'm sure that would be a help, because he is a leading specialist and he's a lovely man. Ingrid, I'm really sorry to hear that, and our hearts go out to you. I'm sure everyone listening. Claire, I can see your face. I mean, this is the thing. It's real. This is real. This is not like these plans aren't. They're literally about people staying alive. It's that basic.
And it just, Ingrid highlighted the fact that it takes such a long time to get from the first appointment to having tests to getting results, the next appointment. You shouldn't be waiting weeks and weeks, not in this day.
Whenever I've had a scan, I'm always like, so when do I get the results? Or I'll be said, no, when do I get the results? When do they appear? When's the GP going to get them? Can I have the appointment with the GP booked in now? Like, no, you can't do it to get the results. Well, then it'll be 2 weeks. No, I want...
I know.
But I'm the pushy person who's just like, well, I'm not leaving until you give me the appointment.
Yeah,
I am that person. I don't care. And people go, it's a free service. No, it's not free. I've paid for it. I've paid more than my fair share. I want my service.
Yeah, I emailed the chief exec of the trust because I wasn't getting the answers. I was not happy at the time. She picked up the phone to me. You shouldn't have to do that.
You shouldn't have to do that. No, exactly. Well, I say I mean, I've been honest about this before. When I went into hospital, an NHS hospital, to have my daughter, I made damn sure everyone knew that what I did for a living, and I made damn sure they knew I had the then health secretary's personal mobile. Yeah. And I said it in a joking way. I don't care. I want to come out of this alive with my kid healthy. I don't care. I'm that ruthless. But the thing is, we can't all do that, and that's what I think is unfair. Everyone should be getting automatically fast, efficient, best treatment. We're a first world country. We spend a fortune on this service. It should be good. I think there is a problem in the actual way it's structured rather than anything else. So there we are. 11:33 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to be talking to Mark Littlewood of Popular Conservatism about, the two-child benefit cap. I'm sure he's come across one Peter Mandelson many, many times. And where we are on all the big stories of the day. That's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. Just approaching 11:35. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall's still with me. Get her thoughts on what my next guest has to say. He's Mark Littlewood. He's Director of Popular Conservatism and joins us to talk about the biggest stories of the day. A very good morning to you.
Hey Julia, great to be with you.
Great to see you. Now, you've been around Westminster many, many years. There's a lot of us on the show today. What do you make of where we are with Peter Mandelson in particular right now, and the Tories' efforts to get all the documentation published around what the Prime Minister and his chief advisor, Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, and anyone else knew about Peter Mandelson and his relationship and friendship and close ties with the already then convicted, convicted paedophile billionaire Jeffrey Epstein. Do you think they're going to get all those documents? Should the government publish all those documents?
Great question. There's two separate things going on, really, aren't there, Julia? The first is what happens to Peter Mandelson. We can't call him. Can we call him Lord Mandelson still?
He's still a lord, and he can still get a good table in a restaurant.
Maybe in future he should be known as Peter Mountbatten Windsor. Shouldn't we just use that surname? No, I mean, what's going to happen to him? There's a criminal investigation. People can make a judgment about which laws they think are broken. Is he going to face criminal charges? We'll see. The real issue politically, beyond the end of Mandelson's public life, which has clearly come to a close, is what's the level of contagion here?
Yeah.
How much does this spread back to Starmer and McSweeney? What did the Prime Minister know? When? What judgment did he then make on the basis of that information? There's a further question as well, right? Was Keir Starmer potentially not sufficiently curious? So he may have been presented with a couple of sides of A4, but if he made a decision to appoint Mandelson as US ambassador on that, it might be argued that he should have asked some follow-up questions. Did he? You know, he could have asked for more information if he thought what in front of him was insufficient. I am hoping, but I fear I will be wrong, I am hoping that the PM will not be able to deflect at Prime Minister's questions just to say there's a criminal investigation, I can't say anything, because the question of what Starmer and McSweeney knew and when is not directly pertinent to that criminal investigation.
Well, no, exactly. And this is the thing. And you're quite right. I mean, we certainly expect that Kemi Badenoch will go on this. I think it would be very strange if she didn't. Yeah. And I think it would be an omission if she didn't. But then we know that we've got that what's called a humble address, this motion to basically try and get this information at 1 o'clock. It's fascinating. The Prime Minister, with more than 400 MPs, apparently doesn't feel confident, given the anger on the backbenchers about this and the anger genuinely against Keir Starmer and hopelessness, that he's going to be able to defeat that Tory motion, even though they've got 100 odd MPs. Quite extraordinary. So he's going to basically say, well, yes, we will publish everything unless it, could damage national security and national interest. But of course, you can basically redact pretty much everything on that basis, and we've seen that happen before. But this is the thing, he will no doubt just say criminal investigation can't do it. But again, that's nothing to do with the decision to appoint him, is it?
Exactly right. Yeah, these are two very, very different things. What the Met Police come up with about whether, I don't know, Mandelson's broken the Official Secrets Act or insider trading or whatever, you'd need an expert lawyer to pick through what laws he may have broken. The decision to appoint is a discretionary political decision, completely out with whatever Metropolitan Police investigation might now be taking place into Mandelson. And I don't think the Prime Minister will be able to wriggle off this one. You've mentioned the anger on the backbenches. There's an awful lot of anger or despair at the performance of the Prime Minister. But there is outright hatred of Morgan McSweeney amongst a vast number of Labour backbenchers. So any Tory motion through this rather quaintly titled humble address may very well attract the support of Labour MPs who are determined that McSweeney must go. That's the problem that Starmer's got. Yeah. And you would think politically that if this starts to continue, well, if this continues to get worse for the Prime Minister, it's already started pretty appallingly, that McSweeney gets thrown under the bus.
But will that be enough? I'm not sure whether, again, Boris Johnson throwing, Dominic Cummings under the bus and others. I mean, these things have a habit to come back to haunt them, don't they? What is very interesting is, of course, there's also questions about the royal aspect of this. Andrew, look, he's dead of night. He leaves Royal Lodge. He's now, going to be, basically exiled to the Sandringham private estate of the King in Norfolk, and hopefully out of the sight of cameras. I have a funny feeling he won't stay out of sight. You got to remember, he doesn't think he's really done anything wrong by being mates with this guy. Lots of questions of criminal investigation into him. But there's also one that ties him to Mandelson in terms of the allegations. And it is something my colleague Isabel Oakeshott has raised on air, that when he was the UK's trade envoy, that he is alleged to have passed documents, a Treasury document about the Icelandic financial crisis to a business tycoon who had just bought part of a collapsed Icelandic bank. Question marks that he, again, when appointed in this role, for God's sake, give the spare a job. We all know about him packing his golf clubs and going off and going on a jolly. We all know that when he was doing, pitch at the Palace, he was making sure that he was getting a cut. And it's all very unseemly. It's all very tacky. And the man has got apparently millions that are simply unexplainable, unless I say he, like Mandelson, has just had the most amazing luck with their ISAs over the years, far better than the rest of us have. They've been very good at their investments. I mean, there's just big question marks about both of them and their lifestyles and how they're funded. But if he, as a UK trade envoy, appointed, again, by government, by prime ministers over the years, if he did the same thing, I mean, he would likely be facing charges, would he not?
Yes, I mean, I would have thought, as I say, I'm not an expert lawyer, Julia, at all. I'm not a lawyer at all. But on the face of it, there seem to be questions here to answer with rather compelling evidence that would point to breaches in the criminal law.
Yep.
Now, the difference, however, between the way the House of Windsor has treated this and the Labour government has treated this was the King got ahead of the curve, right?
Yeah.
Any move against Mandelson has been extracted from the Prime Minister through gritted teeth, whereas the King took the bold decision to completely strip Andrew of every title. He's housing him essentially as his brother, not as any form of royal. So that's just a sort of a piece of pity within the family, which I guess he's.
But also saves him going off and doing a book or something. You know, keep him quiet.
Yeah. And, you know, imagine if Keir Starmer had acted in the same way vis-a-vis Peter Mandelson.
Yeah.
Instead, it's been that salami slicing of we will only give up what we're obliged to at any given time. Yeah. So you're even having sort of it suggested that he could stay in the House of Lords, for example. Yeah. Well, that blew up within hours. So the difference in approach, I think, is extraordinarily marked. The royal family have completely cut off Andrew. The Labour government is only cut off Mandelson by degrees under extreme pressure, public scrutiny, and the release of public materials.
Very interesting. Well, no doubt I'd love to get people's reaction to that. 0344 499 1000. Let's also talk to you about where we are with the two-child benefit cap. This was something that was brought in by the Conservatives, basically saying, you know what, if you're choosing to have more than 2 children, you're not going to get, and again, this is not the 20-odd quid you get for each child, which you still get for each child you have, and every family gets it unless they are very high earners. This is the £3,500. I do keep stressing, it's £3,500 a year per child that families who are on universal credit can get. Now, some of them will be working. Vast majority of those who've got 3, 4, 5, 6 kids who are going to be getting this money. Now the cap has been scrapped under Labour in that vote last night. Well, it's going through the law, but this was a key second reading vote. That basically they're going to get this extra £3,500 for these kids. Vast majority of these families are either not working or only one parent is working. And when that one parent is working, they're working part-time. They're working 16 hours a week. They're working 2 days a week when they've got 4, 5, 6 kids and the wife's not working. It's a miracle to understand why they can't make their own ends meet, isn't it? We're told by Labour, no, this is tackling child poverty. I'm of the view those parents could tackle their own children's poverty if they put them in it themselves. But Reform have been a bit confused. Nigel Farage was originally in favour of scrapping the cap, and then he said he would only scrap it if it was for British families and those who were both working, which I think was only about 3,500 families in total, because a huge number of the families who are getting this are actually of Bangladeshi or Pakistani origin or even nationality. But now Nigel Farage has dropped his support for doing that. He said he's going to keep the keep. He said he'd want to have the cap still in, but no one thought to tell Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick last night, the 2 latest Reform MPs who accidentally voted with the Labour Party last night. What on earth's going on?
Yeah, that's right, isn't it? I mean, the Reform MPs split on this issue, and Reform does seem to have done a bit of a dance about what its exact position is. I mean, I'm very much with your inference, Julia, that the real long-term solution to getting people out of poverty is to get parents into work. And if you disincentivise...
Well, don't have 6 kids.
Yeah, well, I have 6 kids if you can afford them. But we are disincentivizing people working because taxes and contributions are going up, and we are incentivizing people sitting on welfare. And if you set up that incentive structure, that's what's going to happen. You're going to get more people on welfare, or at least working fewer hours. This 16-hour limit is completely extraordinary. So we've tilted the whole thing in that direction. And you might, I suppose, argue that a quick, handout now to poorer families does something on child poverty in a kind of sugar rush way. But if we want to actually tackle this problem over 5 or 10 years or over a generation, we've got to completely change the incentives of this. I think on Reform's position, they voted against on second reading. They're in favour, I think, of lifting the cap in certain circumstances, but not all, if I've understood it. So it would
it seems to have changed. We don't know. It seems to have changed in the last 24 hours.
Yeah. And I would think, look, I'm only assuming this from afar. Reform, I know they get some brickbats from about this. Kemi Badenoch's always very keen to point out when Nigel Farage hasn't voted on something in the House of Commons. I mean, I think Reform are acting rationally, from their own perspective, that they've only got, 8 MPs, it's unlikely to make a big difference in a parliamentary division how they vote. So they're spending most of their time outside of the House of Parliament and Westminster rather than inside it. But yeah, I would agree in future. It's probably Lee Anderson. He's the chief whip, isn't he?
Probably his mistake. Not apparently they were on these two MPs were on the phone desperately trying to find out what the actual policy was.
You would have thought the chief whip should be able to at least send out a text message to other people about which
Thank you. I'm going to leave it there. Mark Littlewood, Director of Public Conservatism. Thank you very much indeed. I was very, very worried for a few moments there, Claire Pierce, that he was going to veer into a by-election that's being held in Gorton and Denton, and if one candidate is mentioned, I have to read out. I've got a whole list. I'll hold it up the camera, those of you who are watching. I've got a whole list of people I have to read out. And seriously, just want to clarify to everybody, anybody who comes on this show and names a single candidate in that by-election or a party or anything, you're going to have to take the entire team out for dinner, and we get to choose a restaurant, and it's going to be in New York or Rio. Yeah, just so you know. Don't do it. Don't do it. I hate having to read out those lists of things. Just going to get some more serious things. I mentioned to you there's been what was described as a very serious incident at De Montfort University in Leicester. Now, we now know a man in his 20s has died after being stabbed in Leicester City Centre at the De Montfort site. He was stabbed following an altercation with another man. The man collapsed in Oxford Street in Leicester City. He was taken to Leicester Royal Infirmary where he died a short time later. But another man has now been arrested. So a man has been stabbed to death near De Montfort University, near the campus there. So we'll bring you the latest on that as we hear it. Right now we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be talking about the latest madness when it comes to trans, because apparently a man who then takes some drugs and then says he's a woman doesn't have any physical advantage over a woman when it comes to sport, which is blatantly obvious nonsense to anyone who has, got eyes and ears and a brain, but apparently not to the British Medical Journal. We'll talk about that up next with the brilliant Round the World yachtswoman Tracy Edwards. This is Talk.
Jeremy Clarkson, a pub owner, he wrote a very scathing piece in The Sun this weekend saying that reform sounds great until you ask what they actually do beyond stopping the boats.
I think what he's done for farming is fantastic. I think he's woken the country up to how blooming difficult actually being a farmer is. So I can tell you, Jeremy, there's a constructive plan for pubs that also cuts the welfare bill. I'm sure he will approve thoroughly of that. And you can tell him we're working very, very hard on a proper agricultural policy as well.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's just approaching 11:50. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer and this is Talk. Well, let's talk about, we do this every day, the latest mad trans stuff. Every now and then it's a I don't know, an encouraging story that makes you think there's actually some hope for some sanity in the world. And every now and then it's rather more depressing stuff. We've got an ongoing court case in Scotland over whether or not men who claim that they think that they're women should be allowed to go into women's prisons. I mean, the answer is pretty simple. Logically, ethically, legally after the Supreme Court decision, but apparently governments still can't make up their minds. And we've had some pretty clear rulings, have we not, in terms of sports bodies. Many of the major sports bodies, football, others, crucially, International Olympic Committee, making it clear that no longer would trans-identified men be allowed to compete as if they were women against women in women's sport. They weren't going to be excluded from from sport. They were simply going to be excluded from the wrong sex category. They can compete as much as they want. They don't get to compete against the people they're not allowed to compete against. It's pretty straightforward for most of us. And yet, well, there's a bit of a spanner in the works from a latest study published in the British Medical Journal. Let's talk about it now with Tracy Edwards, MBE. She's from the Women's Sports Union. She's also a brilliant round-the-world yachtswoman. Very, very good morning to you, Tracy.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining me. I have to say, it did make me laugh when I was just checking, you know, your history as a sportswoman. You were the first woman to win the top Sportsman of the Year award, World Sportsman of the Year, Yachtsman of the Year.
Man of the Year.
Did make me laugh. First woman to win. So the irony, you're perfectly qualified to talk about this. This is a report from the British Medical Journal. It's a study carried out basically saying there's no evidence to justify a blanket ban on trans-identified men, let's call them what they are, from competing in women's sport, because they believe that they are, even if they're born male, they have no advantage over women once they start taking cross-sex hormones. Am I not right in thinking that this is the exact opposite of what every bit of proper evidence has ever shown?
Yeah, exactly right. I think firstly to say that any study that has Joanna Harper and Blair Hamilton anywhere near it should be ignored.
Who were they and what is their history?
Joanna Harper is a man who pretends to be a woman, a scientist, and Blair Hamilton, I think, is studies at one at Loughborough University, and he's a man that wants to be a play in women's football.
Right.
So
they've got skin in the game, shall we say?
They have got skin in the game, as you say. I'm amazed that the BJSM have published this, but it will be heavily critiqued over the next few days and weeks, quite rightly so. The second thing to say is that this study is a little bit of a sleight of hand, not surprisingly. So it is not one study with a large data set of quality data. It is a hodgepodge collection of 50 small, tiny studies of dubious nature, some of them, that have been sort of cobbled together and cherry-picked by people who have skin in the game to say something which is not true.
I'm shocked, I tell you. We also have to accept that, I mean, again, an awful lot of the medical establishment, science and the British medical journalism have been, I mean, very overtly captured by the likes of the Stonewall and the trans activists who would argue, no, there's no issue. But I mean, I've spoken to, you'll know her very well, Sharon Davies, particularly about this many, many, many times. And one of the reasons she was so motivated about this was having to compete as a woman against other women, but East Germans and others who had been drugged to the eyeballs, steroids, and, you know, and they basically had a level of strength and ability it was impossible to compete with because they, you know, had these high levels of testosterone and the like. Now, we know that men who whether they think, pretend, believe, who knows, that they are women, that they can take cross-sex hormones to take down their testosterone levels, but there's been well documented that once you've gone through puberty, you maintain that advantage: height, muscle density, strength, bone density, lung size, the length of your arms, the size of your hands, everything. There are huge male advantages in every sport. Even interestingly, in sort of the city downy sports or the standing up sports, like darts. You're taller, you can throw for longer, you can in every aspect. But they're arguing, look, there isn't an advantage once they've taken these hormones. But am I not right in thinking that actually even once you take those hormones, these men, they don't go down to women's level of hormones, do they? They stay well above what any woman could ever have.
Exactly. And if you're just going to go on drug banning, which of course, Sharon and I are very passionate about her because of the Eastern European situation, obviously, and why we actually started the Women's Sports Union together. If you just look at testosterone, so you can have women taking any testosterone at all with no testosterone in their body.
That's cheating.
But you can have men who have a little bit of testosterone and that's okay. But you're absolutely right. Even if you take cross-sex hormones for 3 years, as some of these studies have stated, men they never lose the advantages that they have. And testosterone starts at 6 weeks as a fetus in the womb. XY chromosome fetus have testosterone blasted at them. Then, of course, puberty. All the other things that come with puberty, as you've just mentioned. You cannot unboil an egg, is one of Sharon's favourite expressions, that I agree with. And I would say, you know, I've seen this firsthand. And as you said in your introduction, anyone with eyes, you know, it knows this for a fact, is why we have women's sports in the first place and why we fought so hard to
otherwise women would never win anything because of the male physical advantage. And we saw something, God, we saw it, didn't it? Just, I mean, I think in a way it did everyone a favour, because it's the disgusting sight of men punching women in the face in the boxing finals, you know, at the Olympics. And we've seen again the likes of Leah Thomas, again, who's just, call me what you are, mate, you're a cheat. A man who was, you know, 400th in the college racing, became first when he was a man, became first when he was thought he was a woman, walking around dangling his meat and two veg in front of all the women in the change room. I mean, let's be honest, you know, but also the fact that there is not a single women's record, not one, in any sporting field, whether it's running, cycling, shot put, tennis, there is not a single woman top Olympian record in the world that cannot be broken by the top 16-year-old boys in high school in America. That's how big the difference is.
Exactly. You know, we saw the Americans' professional women's football team and the Swiss women's football team both beaten by under 15 schoolboys. In sailing, so I think I'm right in saying I'm the only woman to have ever raced around the world with an all-male crew.
All-female crew? Weren't you an all-female crew?
And an all-female crew. Yeah. So I can tell you the difference between an all-male crew and an all-female crew while you're racing around the world in the Southern Ocean is shocking. It's awesome. Men's, this explosive power that men have, which again, getting rid of testosterone and taking cross-sex hormones doesn't get rid of, is truly impressive. The only reason that women can sail around the world on a level playing field with men is that it's not just down to strength, it's down to navigation,
skill,
tactics.
And but again, there is still that advantage. Tracy, I mean, again, another study saying abject nonsense by people who have got, you know, skin in the game, wanting to lie again. They have to lie about it because they know the truth is on our side, not on theirs. I love you, love Sharon Davis for all the fantastic work you're doing. And again, not just women, but also for the athletes coming up younger than you, whether it's a 5-year-old who wants to play netball one day or run, you are protecting girls and women. And I thank you so much for it. Tracy Edwards, MBE from the Women's Sports Union, and I mean, just brilliant round the world yachtsman. But I love that win of the first woman to win top yachtsman of the year. But Claire Pearson, I mean, these studies, they get reported, and the only reason I talked about it is because it's being reported as if it's real, and it'll be quoted by people as genuine. It's a load of nonsense.
And you want to get to the day where these pieces of this pamphlet of information is put together and people just receive it and just go, that's nice, and put it in the bin because they know it's utter rubbish. Why we had have to report on it?
BMJ shouldn't be publishing this stuff, but they, like an awful lot of that world, the publishing world is absolutely captured by trans, the medical world is, the scientific world, but it gives credence to people telling lies. And again, if you are a medic or a scientist or you're involved in sport and you genuinely think that you can claim, you know, there's clearly no male advantage over women, you're a liar. Yeah. I'm sorry, you're a liar. You're lying to yourself at the very, very, very least.
Yeah.
Let alone lying to everyone else.
I went to the gym with my son. He can lift stuff that I can't.
He can lift you.
Well, yes, he can do that as well.
He's 6'2", to be fair. Anyway, 7:59 is the time. We're coming up to the top of the hour. In just a few moments, we will have PMQs. I think it's going to be a good one, folks. I don't think that Keir Starmer is going to be looking forward to it, but I have a funny feeling Kenny Bakenot will. We'll take those first exchanges live, and we'll also be examining it all with Claire Pearson and Peter Cardwell live in the studio. I want to get your reaction as well. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. I wonder what will come up. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's 2 minutes past midday on a Wednesday. That means it's Prime Minister's questions. Any moment now, we're expecting Kemi Badenoch to stand up to ask her first question. Will she talk about Peter Mandelson? Will she talk about his appointment as the ambassador to Washington and about the Prime Minister's judgment? Will that come up? That's what we're certainly expecting. Whether you are listening on DAB Plus radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, I'm sure you're waiting for that too. Joining me in the studio is still Claire Pearsall, former Conservative government advisor, and Talk presenter Peter Cardwell. Let's go straight to the Commons right now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The whole House will be disgusted by the latest revelations about Jeffrey Epstein. All of us want to see his victims get justice. But the political decision to appoint Epstein's close associate, Peter Mandelson, as Britain's ambassador to Washington goes to the very heart of this Prime Minister's judgment. When he made that appointment, was he aware that Mandelson had continued his friendship even after Epstein's conviction for child prostitution?
Simple question. Mr. Speaker, let me start where I must, with the victims of Epstein, and all of our thoughts are with them. Can I also say our thoughts are with all those who lost jobs, savings and livelihoods in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crash. To learn that there was a cabinet minister leaking sensitive information at the height of the response to the 2008 crash is beyond infuriating. And I am as angry as the public and any member of this House. Mandelson betrayed our country, our Parliament and my party. Mr. Speaker, he lied repeatedly to my team when asked about his relationship with Epstein before and during his tenure as ambassador. I regret appointing him. If I knew then what I know now, he would never have been anywhere near government. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the Cabinet Secretary, with my support, took the decision to refer material to the police. And there is now a criminal investigation. I've instructed my team to draft legislation to strip Mandelson of his title and wider legislation to remove disgraced peers. And this morning, I've agreed with His Majesty the King that Mandelson should be removed from the list of Privy Councillors on grounds that he's brought the reputation of the Privy Council into disrepute.
Mr. Speaker, I asked the Prime Minister a very specific question. Did he know that Mandelson had continued his friendship with Epstein after the conviction? He says if he knew then what he knows now, but he did know. In January 2024, a journalist from the Financial Times informed the Prime Minister that Mandelson had stayed in Epstein's house even after that conviction for child prostitution. So did the Prime Minister conveniently forget this fact, or did he decide it was a risk worth taking?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, as the House would expect, we went through a process. There was a due diligence exercise, and then there was security vetting by the security services. What was not known was the depth, the sheer depth and extent of the relationship. He lied about that to everyone for years. And new information was published in September showing the relationship was materially different to what we'd been led to believe. When the new information came to light, I sacked him. But we did go through a due diligence exercise. The points that are being put to me were dealt with within that exercise. In response to the humble address this afternoon, I intend to make sure that all of the material is published. Mr. Speaker, the only exemptions our national security, if it would prejudice national security, then my first duty is obviously to keep this country safe. And when we drafted humble addresses, we always put an exemption for national security. But also anything will prejudice international relations. Mr. Speaker, you in the House will appreciate that in the course of discussions country to country, there are very sensitive issues of security, intelligence and trade, which cannot be disclosed without compromising the relationship between the two countries or a third country. Mr. Speaker, so that I can be totally open with the House, I should also disclose that the Metropolitan Police have been in touch with my office this morning to raise issues about anything that would prejudice their investigations. We're in discussion with them about that, and I hope to be able to update the House, but I do think I should make that clear to the House at this point, because those discussions are ongoing.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to come to the humble address in a moment, but the Prime Minister cannot blame the process. He did know it was on Google. If the Conservative Research Department could find this information out, why couldn't Number 10? On the 10th of September, when we knew this, I asked him at that dispatch box, he gave Mandelson his full confidence at that dispatch box, not once, but twice. He only sacked him after pressure from us. I am asking the Prime Minister something very specific, not about the generalities of the full extent. Can the Prime Minister tell us, did the official security vetting he received mention Mandelson's ongoing relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein?
So clear. Prime Minister.
Yes, it did. As a result, various questions were put to him. I intend to disclose to this House all of the national security, prejudice to international relations on one side. I want to make sure this House sees the full documentation, so it will see for itself the extent to which time and time again Mandelson completely misrepresented the extent of his relationship with Epstein and lied throughout the process, including in response to the due diligence.
Mr. Speaker, I think it is shocking what the Prime Minister has just said.
Absolutely.
How can he stand up there saying that he knew, but he just asked Peter Mandelson if the security vetting was true or false? This is a man who had been sacked from Cabinet twice already for unethical behaviour. That is absolutely shocking. And that is why later today, my party will call on the government to release all documents relating to Mandelson's appointment, not just the ones the Prime Minister wants us to see. Because this government is trying to sabotage that release with an amendment to let him choose what we see, the man who appointed Mandelson in the first place. Labour MPs now have to decide if they want to be accessories to his cover-up. Can the Prime Minister guarantee that he won't remove the whip if they refuse to vote for his whitewash amendment?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the first exemption is in relation to anything that could compromise national security. That is not a small matter, and many members on the benches opposite will know precisely why that needs to be in the exemption. When we were drafting humble addresses, when we were sitting over there, we always made sure that exemption was in, because we knew how important it was to the then government. I don't think I've seen a humble address without that in, because and just to be clear, to vote to release something that would prejudice national security is wrong in principle. The second exemption is in relation to things that would prejudice international relations. There will be discussions about security and intelligence and trade, which are highly sensitive to the two countries involved and to third countries. Well, they have to ask themselves whether they want to vote to prejudice our national security. I don't think they do. I don't think, in fairness, that they do. But can I reassure the House, Mr. Speaker? Let me reassure the House. The process for deciding what falls into those categories will not be a political process. It will be led by the Cabinet Secretary, supported by government legal teams. So they will be looking at the question of prejudice. They will be making that decision. The only additional thing I just want to put before the House, because there was a discussion this morning with the Metropolitan Police, is that we are in discussions with them about any material that they're concerned will prejudice their investigation. We're at an early stage. We're at an early stage of that discussion, but I didn't want to have the House not know that that discussion is going on.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is talking about national security. The national security issue was appointing Mandelson in the first place. And what he has said about the humble address is a red herring. To those Labour MPs who were not there in the last Parliament, let me tell them, humble addresses already exempt genuine national security. This is not about national security, this is about his job security. His amendment lets him withhold anything to do with international relations. But this whole appointment is to do with international relations. So if they're voting for it, they are voting for the cover-up. If the Prime Minister is serious about national security concerns, then he should ask the Intelligence and Security Committee to decide which documents should be released. Will he commit to doing so here and now?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've set out the process. It won't be a political process. It will be led by the Cabinet Secretary, supported by the government legal teams. But I'm pleased that she, I think, now accepts that at least the first exemption that we've written in to the amendment to the petition is the right amendment in relation to prejudice national security. But she and others behind her will understand that because of the breadth of what's asked for, and we're doing everything we can to make sure this is fully transparent and disclosed, but she and those behind her will understand from their own experience in government the sensitivity of information about security and intelligence and trade relations that are inevitably caught in exchanges of the nature that are being asked for. And it is right that anything that prejudices, not touches on, prejudices international relations is protected within the disclosure.
If that was really the case, then he wouldn't mind if the ISC had a look. And let's be clear, he says the Cabinet Secretary makes it non-political, but that doesn't make it independent. What we want is an independent look. The ISC is independent. The Cabinet Secretary works for him. We know that there will be a cover-up because this implicates the Prime Minister and his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, a protege of Peter Mandelson. The Prime Minister chose to inject Mandelson's poison into the heart of his government on the advice of Morgan McSweeney. His catastrophic lack of judgment, telling us now that he did know, has harmed the special relationship. It has endangered national security. It's not the humble address, it's him. It's compromised our diplomacy and it has embarrassed our nation. After all of this, does he have the same full confidence in Morgan McSweeney that he had in Peter Mandelson?
Prime Minister.
Morgan McSweeney is an essential part of my team. He helped me change the Labour Party and win an election. Of course I have confidence in him. But, Mr. Speaker, whatever is slung across this dispatch box, I don't think it's right for the Cabinet Secretary to be denigrated in that way and to suggest that he would be involved in a cover-up. There's the politics that comes over the dispatch boxes, but I honestly don't think it's right to impugn the Cabinet Secretary in that way. And I suspect in their heart of hearts, many on those benches would agree. Mr. Speaker, I'm as angry as anyone about what Mandelson has been up to. The disclosures that have been made this week of him passing sensitive information at the height of the response to the 2008 financial crash is utterly shocking and appalling. He's betrayed our country. He's lied repeatedly. He's responsible for a litany of deceit. But this moment demands not just anger, but action. And that's why we've moved quickly, referring material to the police, publishing legislation so we can remove titles from disgraced politicians, and stripping Mandelson of his Privy Councillorship. That is what the public expect, and that is what we will do.
Libins!
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every month...
OK, well, that was a fascinating exchange. I have to say, Kemi Badenoch's questions were, I mean, very, very forensic and very, very specific. Prime Minister, I think, was flailing about a little on a couple of those questions. Very interesting. Joining me for the conversation, chat about this, Peter Carball, talk presenter, and also Claire Pearsall, former Conservative government advisor. I mean, wow. OK, let's start with wow. Now, it's very clear. Look, Kemi Badenoch going in really hard. Look, this is all about the political decision of the Prime Minister to appoint Mandelson as the US ambassador. You know, forget everything else. This is about you. I'm asking questions. Was he aware that Mandelson had continued his friendship with Epstein after his conviction? Prime Minister did the usual, starting with the victims. Apparently didn't care about the victims when he appointed him as ambassador. He talked a lot about, and he mentioned it in the final answer there, all the things that the government has done. Very much avoiding answering the actual question, though.
Yes, and then eventually had to when it was asked again. There is so much in this that shows a total lack of judgment by Keir Starmer. Even if he didn't know about the Epstein stuff, which he did to some degree, well, there were still 2 previous occasions in which Peter Mandelson had been sacked in disgrace. Why on earth was he made ambassador? So Kemi Badenoch makes some really, really good points. The other excellent point she made was about Chris Wormold, the Cabinet Secretary, and Keir Starmer.
That's the most senior civil servant in the government, isn't it?
The chief civil servant. She was, Keir Starmer sort of pushed back and said, oh, how can you criticise him and this shouldn't be political? Well, the point is that is the man who's going to be in charge of the process to redact some of this information coming out. Separately to that, Gordon Brown in September asked him to look into this and
Gordon
release
Brown has
information.
revealed this in the last couple of days and said that he wrote to him in September and he's passed that to the police now, asking, so what, basically saying, I think there's a question mark over whether Mandelson leaked stuff.
And Chris Wormold, at the very least, did not do enough in that. There were information given to Gordon Brown saying that some of the records didn't exist.
Well, he said that no records of information or correspondence from Lord Mandelson's mailbox could be found. Did they look very hard?
Did they look very hard? And also, crucially, did Keir Starmer say, make this go away? That's a very interesting point.
And we know
as well.
the cabinet secretaries are very close to the Prime Ministers. If they're not, they tend not to stay in the job very long. Claire, I mean, you know, when the Prime Minister says, look, you know, Downing Street referred this to the police, they've stripped Mandelson of his title, they've removed him from the list of Privy Council, well, asking the King to remove from the list of Privy Councillors. Now, again, of those last two, I just couldn't care. I just don't care about these things. I really don't. He can still call himself a lord for now and get himself a decent dinner party, a dinner reservation in a restaurant. But he said...
I think the second part of the title is going to be quite tricky.
The
Lord bit probably quite good, the Mandelson bit probably not.
But the Prime Minister, it was fascinating when his first answer, he said this was beyond infuriating. I thought that was I think we all went, oh, what the... But he said that Peter Mandelson had betrayed our country, betrayed our Parliament and our party. He said he lied repeatedly to my team. I regret appointing him. If I knew then what I know now, I would never have appointed him. Very, very clear. However, next question, Kemi Badenoch points out that you were told back in January 2024, before you were Prime Minister, before you appointed an FT journalist, that the Prime Minister, he was told the Prime Minister that Mandelson had stayed in Epstein's house after Epstein had been convicted of this charge of soliciting a 14-year-old girl for prostitution, for a paedophile act. I mean, so he did you forget, she asked? This is the thing, he did know enough then not to appoint him. And this is why everyone at the time said, are you sure this is a good idea? And we were saying it publicly.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. And this is where Kemi Badenoch was very, very good. She didn't go in shouting and screaming. She just put these questions that are very, very direct. He came up with some good answers. I mean, stripping from the Privy Council is actually a really important thing. It's not necessarily interesting.
Because you actually give advice.
Yes, you do. It's a really important position to hold, and it's and
it's
one that should be
ex-cabinet ministers. This role.
Yeah, yes, it is. You know, there are a few other exceptions to that, but these are very senior people, and it's an absolute privilege to have that. So it should be taken away. The general public pretty much won't understand, care. Give
it doesn't make any difference
two
to
hoots
me
about it. What they will want to know is how much he knew and why did he maintain this line that he didn't know anything.
But this is the thing.
Clearly he did.
The next key thing came in Kemi Badenoch's third question when she said, you know, basically, don't blame the process. You could have Googled it, basically. But she said back in September 24 at PMQs, and I was watching this video last night, he was asked again and again, did you have confidence? He just lost his Deputy Prime Minister, hadn't he, I think, at that point. And then he was about to lose Mandelson, having to sack him as the US ambassador. But he gave full confidence to Mandelson twice, in two questions. And she asked very clear, did the official security vetting that he received mention Mandelson's ongoing relationship with Epstein? Now, we have not known the answer to this before now. The answer was very clear. Yes, it did. And did you hear that rumble on the benches on both sides of the chamber there? As a result, he said various questions were put to him and he lied throughout the process. But this is the thing. If the security people say, look, this has happened and we know you were at this house and blah, 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 and you were the convicted paedophile, you're clearly big mates with him still. And then you ask him questions, Peter, and he says, no, we're not really good friends. Who do you believe? Do you believe the security services vetting or the man who has lost two jobs previously for being dishonest?
Within whose interest it is to continue to be US ambassador. And we've got to remember the key point about the vetting was done after he was appointed.
And we know this
US
because Yvette
ambassador.
Cooper confirmed that. And that's not really thought. Now, it does appear that what happened was that basically he was being looked at and his name was in the hat. His hat was put in the ring. And then he basically leaked that it had already happened. It went into the front pages that he'd already been approved. And then they vetted afterwards. Very Mandelsonian.
Well, indeed. And also it would have looked dreadful for them to say, actually, we got it terribly wrong. We're going to sack this guy. Although, in retrospect, that's exactly what they should have done.
That was the giveaway that he was an inappropriate person to appoint.
Exactly. I mean, a lot of this is blindingly obvious. Even with the revelations, even with the 3 million pages that we now have, even before that, all the 3 million pages do. Yes, it's deeply embarrassing. There are more revelations about who knew what when, but actually the 3 million pages of Epstein revelations, all they do is compound the fact of everything that Keir Starmer knew previously.
Yeah, absolutely. And Claire, we got into a bit of processology, didn't we? Where they were talking about this what was it? This humble address, this stuff that's coming up at 1 o'clock, and this is about trying to get these documents. You very helpfully, if you weren't listening at 10 o'clock, shame on you. She explained how it all works. She works in the Commons, but there's a big thing about what documents we're going to see, and the Prime Minister's basically rather unsure whether he's got enough Labour votes with 400 plus MPs to actually basically cut off the Tory legs and basically stop them from getting all these documents released. But saying, look, unless there's an implication for national security, and as Kemi Badenoch pointed out, that goes without saying. Who gets to decide what's in the interest of national security and what isn't? And she's pointing out, actually, this is about your security, not national security. But do you think we're going to see enough of these documents? Because at the end of the day, this looks like a major. I'm trying to think what word. It's a word that goes before up. And by not just the political appointees in Downing Street and the Prime Minister, but the civil service and others as well. This was a horrible mess up, and it's going to be in a lot of people's interests who are able to control the documents to not publish all the documents.
The devil is always in the detail as to who is going to be in charge of this, and I do think it's going to end up being the Cabinet Secretary who is going to make the decision as to what is in the national interest. Or
there's already a question mark over him
and this
from
is
the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown, who is understandably furious that private memos sent to him and his team by his own advisors were, it would appear if these documents are genuine, the Epstein files, were then forwarded, sometimes within seconds of receiving them, to a paedophile billionaire financier, best pal on the other side of the Atlantic.
Quite interestingly, I've just seen a crop of Labour MPs who are so incredibly angry. These are backbench Labour MPs saying that the government has a duty of candour, and they are pushing incredibly hard for absolutely none of it to be redacted. So I think he's getting more pressure, in fairness, from his own side, which I think is going to actually tip the difference here.
Isn't it funny how Mr. Detail and Mr. Rules didn't seem to know Mr. Moral didn't seem to know the details, didn't seem to know the rules, didn't seem to follow the process which he held so dearly in terms of how things should work, and him talking about things like, oh, we shouldn't be bringing up the Cabinet Secretary. Well, everyone who is in that role and every civil servant has to have some accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was really interesting. Kemi Badenoch said, you chose to inject Mandelson's poison into the heart of government. This is a catastrophic lack lapse of judgment. But then bringing
all
in,
of that's fair.
But then, bringing in then Morgan McSweeney, his chief of staff.
He's toast.
Who's
He's
again a protege Peter Mandelson. These people have their little tentacles everywhere, and basically, I mean, half of they put the band back together. Half of Tony Blair's team are back in Parliament and they're back in number 10 anyway. But does he have the same confidence in Morgan McSweeney that he had in Mandelson? And he goes, yes, of course he did. But at the end of the day, no one seems to think he survives. Can he lose another chief of staff? He already lost Sue Gray, and is actually this? Okay, there's outrage from Labour benches, but let's be honest, a lot of this is a good excuse for getting rid of the Prime Minister, who's doing worse in the polls than any former Prime Minister in modern history, and is going to lose us the local elections, probably the next general election. He's going to take us all down with him. He's obviously useless. His staff clearly go around, frankly, making a lot of unnecessary enemies. They've taken the whip off people for voting for things which then subsequently became government policy, things like the two-child benefit cap and winter fuel and goodness knows what, and that, frankly, they've had enough of him. Is this, Peter, an attempt, actually, the backbenchers who were making it clear yesterday, you know what, you can't guarantee we'll vote with you. Yeah. That, to all intents and purposes, means the Prime Minister couldn't, that's effectively no confidence. Yes. If you have a majority of, 160, 70 in real terms, and you've got 400 odd MPs, and you can't get a vote through Parliament like that, then something's going wrong. Is this going to be used as an excuse to get rid of him?
The tail is wagging the dog in the Labour Party, there's no doubt about that. Keir Starmer is on the back foot. He's extremely weak, and what he has shown when he has been weak is that he's ruthless. And unlike Sue Gray, Morgan McSweeney is a very different character.
He's at the heart of Labour.
Keir Starmer was kind of created by Morgan McSweeney, essentially. And if Morgan McSweeney goes, well, that's the beginning of the end for Keir Starmer. I think it'll take longer than people think it'll take. If he can keep Morgan McSweeney in place until the local elections, Morgan McSweeney will be the fall guy for those bad results in the local elections. Then I think once you get rid of the Praetorian Guard around you, well, it's just
got no one to protect him. It doesn't seem to have. It doesn't have a natural constituency in the party.
And he never has.
I'm picking a name at random, Angela.
Yes.
Claire, what do you make of this?
Yeah, no, I think Peter's right, and I think the one phrase that you never really want to hear in this circumstance is that somebody has full confidence.
Please don't ever, either of you, please don't ever express full confidence in me.
No, I have full confidence.
No, Julia.
We'll be on this station. When are you next on?
Friday at 10 o'clock.
I mean, who knows?
Maybe.
Who knows, frankly. I don't know. He'll probably be chief of staff in number 10, just as likely. Brilliant analysis. Great to hear from you. Fantastic PMQs. It's still ongoing, but again, you can't take the whole thing because we've got lives, things to do.
You care about your viewers and listeners.
Care about my viewers and listeners. Yeah, exactly. More from Claire coming up. Peter Carl, thank you so much. 12:29's time. We're going to hear your reaction to that. We're also going to be talking to Reform UK's mayoral candidate for London. That's Layla Cunningham. We'll also talk to Robert Harbin, a senior royal journalist, and also about the latest on Andrew. This is Talk.
There is definitely some credence to be given to the idea of guilt by association, and mere association or mere presence doesn't indicate guilt or doesn't indicate that you actually participated in these sordid and disgusting crimes. But when you see the repetitiousness, when you see the long-term interactions where it would be very difficult for anybody to be friends with Jeffrey Epstein without knowing the reputation, without seeing the assorted detritus in his path that he's left.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:31 is the time. We're going to get to your calls, some of you reacting to PMQ, some reacting to other big stories we're talking about today. We'll get to those in just a few moments. First up there, let's go to my guest right now, Layla Cunningham. You'll know, of course, as a regular on the show, Reform UK's mayoral candidate for London. I can't get over the fact it's another 2 years away. Layla, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Hi, Julia. How are you?
Very well. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, I know you've been waiting on the line. You've not been able to watch Prime Minister's questions, but goodness me, that was quite an exchange. Do you think, I mean, the Prime Minister said he's got full confidence in Morgan McSweeney as Chief of Staff, and he says that Peter Mandelson, look, if he'd known then what he knows now about Peter Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and how long it was going on, and if the proper, the vetting had shown up, he would never have appointed him. He regrets appointing him. Do you think the Prime Minister and or his Chief of Staff survived this scandal?
I don't think they should survive, because whether he knew about this Epstein file or not, he did have MI6 warnings, according to the press. And you got to ask, what was the calculation that made him ignore those warnings and appoint him anyway? And you got to ask yourself, who is he beholden to that he really ignored a matter of national security and appointed him anyway? And it doesn't seem that he's beholden to the country.
It does seem quite bizarre that he found he's the person who knew the least about Peter Mandelson in the entire country. I'm sure there are 11-year-olds who know more about having just done a cursory Google occasionally. We shall wait and see what happens there. Now, what on earth happened last night in the House of Commons when two Reform MPs, a quarter of your MPs went into the wrong voting lobby? The two newest arrivals, Suella Braverman and Robert Jenry, apparently not sure about which way Reform were going to go when it came to a vote at the second reading on this law to basically scrap the scrap the cap, on the child benefit. Basic £3,500 goes to parents who've had more than 2 kids if they're on universal credit. What is Reform's policy on this? Because I'm confused.
So, Julia, we've had this conversation again. So Reform's approach is simple, is that if you work hard, play by the rules, and you are British, we will back you. That's why we propose that the 2-child cap is only lifted for full-time working couples in Britain. And don't forget, because of successive governments, we have had mass migration of foreign cheap labour, which have kept wages low because we flooded the market with low-skilled, low wages, and wages have been stagnant since 2008. But due to bad government decisions, inflation's gone up, prices have gone up, rent's gone up, and people just don't have money. But of course, we want to encourage people in work. We want to encourage British people to have children. And so our approach is, if you are in full-time work and you want to raise a family, Reform backs you. But
is this so both parents have to be British, both parents have to be in full-time work? This is about 3,700 of the roughly 500,000 households with more than 2 children who are likely to benefit from the scrapping of the cap. So just means it will go to a tiny number of people. So the cost of scrapping that cap in university won't be in the billions.
No, but it's a message. It's a message that we back working people, but we don't back millions of people who enter the country and the labour markets and come to the country and want to live off it. And the problem is that Labour thinks poverty is fixed by just giving out handouts.
Well, I think the thing I think most of us are really flabbergasted by in the last years is all the revelations about just how many people who are not born in this country, who are not British citizens of this years, were we not, that people come to this country who are economic migrants, they're working hard and they're contributing to immigration.
And also, we haven't invested in skills and technology. We have millions of people out of work, veterans, and we should invest in skills and technology and arm them with the skills of the future, the tech skills of the future.
I mean, it's all very well. A lot of this, they cost an awful lot of money. And again, everything that Reform is saying they want to do, and a lot of our audience support a lot of the policies you're talking about, they take time. They cost a hell of a lot of money, because actually getting 1 million youngsters claiming benefits, not in education, not in training, getting them into training, getting them up to scratch, getting them teaching them the sort of work ethic where, frankly, anyone will want to employ them and they can keep a job for more than 2 days. That is going to take a lot of effort. None of this stuff is happening overnight.
A lot of it is done online. My niece became a data analyst. You do it online, you provide these courses online. I mean, this is not a policy, this is just my idea, for free. and they can start implementing. You know, when I had a startup ages ago, I learned all the some technical skills myself.
But you're motivated. A lot of people, you like anyone of any political party, you're motivated people. That's different from people who are sitting at home playing on their video games all day.
But perhaps if benefits didn't pay so well and were capped and were dependent on you finding work, we'd have and I think people do want to work, but the problem is that
I don't see. I think a lot of people don't want to work. Oh, they do. They say I want to work, but what I want to do is I want to have a job for 50k a year, eating chocolate. I mean, we'd all like one of those jobs. But
what's the incentive?
They don't want to do the sort of jobs that unfortunately they're qualified to do.
Well, what's the incentive for working when you can be on benefits and earn similar?
So is reforms policy, or would you be arguing to Nigel Farage that reforms policy should go further and actually you shouldn't be entitled to benefits, certainly young people, say under 30s, unless you're actually doing workfare? You're actually out every day. You have to get up at 7, you have to turn up somewhere and do jobs, whether it's cleaning graffiti, picking litter, whatever it is, helping to, do some work in a charity.
Benefits should be tied to work or finding work.
Is that going to be official policy? Have you discussed it with Nigel Farage?
This is just me pontificating, Julia.
Okay, no, I just want to know. Okay,
but I think Nigel believes in shrinking the welfare bill by a huge amount. So
Well, we can all believe in it. It's how you go about doing it. Keir Starmer claims to believe in it, but he's not going to go about doing it. Let me also talk about something that was announced yesterday by your leader. And again, he was asked a lot about Peter Mandelson and all of this, because of course, his big mate Donald Trump and his links with Epstein and at this press conference. But most of it was supposed to be about basically trying to save the great British pub. And one of the key things he said, he would scrap Labour's plans to cut the drink driving limit, which he says is killing off particularly rural pubs. The plan is to cut that limit down to, well, pretty much where it is across most of Europe. Is it a good idea to keep it where it is?
100%. Also, by the way, since they've cut it back, it has not reduced road traffic accidents. In fact, I do believe in some areas.
It's been cut back in Scotland, I believe. Is it Scotland?
Yeah, but outcomes are mixed. They're not great. I don't think it's necessary. Why break something that isn't broken? Our road traffic accidents due to drink driving have gone down, and I just feel it's politicians trying to micromanage ordinary life. I mean, don't forget, violent crimes up, knife crimes up, everything is up, and they're just going after an easy target. And rural and suburban pubs, they rely on customers who drive, and it will further hammer pubs. It will hammer people's lives. I mean, it's punitive for nothing. It's punitive on the pubs. It's punitive on people. It's just another form of control.
Okay, let me ask you just one final story. A 70-year-old migrant, Chowdhury Zaman, has been spared jail for sexually assaulting a young girl while encouraging her to cover her head. It was a 12-year-old girl. She was walking home from school in Slough, Berkshire. He held her hand forcibly, kept her on a bench, asked her if she loved him, kissed her. She was absolutely terrified. Her father now has to pick her up from school. But he was encouraging her to cover her head and telling her how she could do so. Apparently he is, legally in the country, although he had to be assisted by a Punjabi interpreter in court. He was spared jail partly because of his age. Should he have gone to jail?
100%.
Why?
He got a suspended sentence. And what does that tell people? What is there a certain age at which I can sexually assault a 12-year-old and I don't go to prison? And he might be here legally, but did he arrive illegally? We don't know how he arrived. Obviously, he could have just had his asylum claim, could have just been granted right now. 100%, and it should have been an aggravated sentence.
Why?
Because it's a 12-year-old girl that he sexually assaulted.
I mean, look, no one is defending that, but in the big scheme of things, my goodness me, the number of men who commit it's a 12-year-old girl. It's a serious sexual offence. That's it.
Sexual offence.
We are, yes, but we also know there is a scale of sex. We know that there is a scale of crime, and there are plenty of men who don't even go to jail for far more serious sexual assaults, also on young girls. Was it right that he should go to jail when many others do not?
Yeah, because two wrongs don't make a right. And actually in London, only 6% of rapes are charged. I spoke to a woman actually who told me she was raped, and the police told her, we're not going to go ahead and charge him because you were smiling in the CCTV before you went up to his flat. And I emailed the police. I said, why are you not charging this? And they said, well, we cannot be sure that a jury will convict. And I said, but it's not up to you. That's a trial matter.
It's the CPS that will not actually take a case to court unless they believe there's a more than 50% chance. And one of the main reasons why there aren't convictions actually is it's a he said, she said. If there's no other evidence, and there's evidence of someone, of a woman being with a man, being with a man possibly for sexual relations, voluntarily, it becomes impossible to be beyond reasonable doubt, doesn't it? We can all, that's the reality. Because if it was a male friend of ours, or our brother, or our husband, or our son who was accused in the same way, you would argue, but of course there's reasonable doubt.
Of course, but as I said, that's a trial matter. The police were making the decision there. They were being judge and jury. And it does come down sometimes to the credibility of the witness and the credibility of the defendant. Okay. And if they lied before, there are many factors. But I'll just point out that they said that this man does not have a previous criminal record. Now, I'll point out that if he did arrive on a boat, of course he would have a clean record. And I pointed this out before. British people have to live with their criminal record, have to live with their past. But people coming on boats are deemed as first-time offenders.
No, that's a very good point. Layla, I have to leave it there. Layla Cunningham, Reform UK's mayoral candidate for London. Listening to that is Claire Pizzle. Just on that final issue, again, my thing is I would never expect anybody, whether they were an illegal arrival, an immigrant born and bred in Britain, to, I'm sorry, not these days, you ain't going to jail for that. If it happened to your child, you'd be absolutely horrified. Yeah. I'm telling you, but you're not, because we don't send people to prison for some far worse crimes than that.
I know, and I think that is a failure of our judicial system, but also just the courts themselves haven't got the time or the capacity to keep looking at these cases, and that's wrong at the same time.
Absolutely.
Don't get rid of jury trials, but we need to be able to deal with these
We need to build more prisons, people. That's what we need to do. But there we are, 12:44, sorry, is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to take your calls. We're also going to be talking to royal journalist Robert Hartman. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:45 is the time. We've got time, I'm afraid, just for one phone call. Alan is in Salford. Alan, what do you want to say?
Hello, Julia. Yes, I watched that buffoon in Parliament today, Mr. Starmer. He's using this national security as a blanket to cover everything, to block it. It's the old saying, he's blowing smoke up your jacksie.
I haven't heard jacksie for a while. I mean, do you think he's going to end up having to publish everything?
He has to do. Why don't you let the House of Commons, National Security Council do it? What it's called?
Yeah, committee decide. That's things. Everyone involved who knows stuff, and also the people who kind of got a say over this, and it's in all of their interests for not all of this to keep coming out.
Yes, but his cabinet officer, the man in front,
cabinet secretary,
defended. He's not independent for me. There's no way it's independent.
No,
but
exactly.
He's actually admitted that the security service told him that he's still in touch with the paedophile.
Yeah.
So,
and again, I thought, and again, Kobe Badenoch used the word shocking, absolutely shocking, that he admitted, yes, he had said that, but they'd asked him about it and then he lied about it. I mean, he would, wouldn't he?
Yeah, but one last thing about the security services. The security services in this country have always looked after us and, it made it clear. But just lately, they've become one of the blob and the woke.
I couldn't agree with you more. I absolutely.
there was a statement, was it last year, that they're not going to concentrate on Islamic terrorism anymore. They're going to concentrate on far right.
Yeah. Who? Yeah.
You know,
so how many people are being blown up by which group? I think the answer is clear.
Yeah, I think there's one being killed by a far right, and there are two, if that.
Yeah, Alan, I couldn't agree with you more. I completely agree. They've definitely become part of the blob because, again, I think you probably don't get promoted unless you are part of the blob. I'm going to have to leave it there. Fantastic call. Thank you very much. Apologies to everyone else who didn't get on air. Going to take another break. My timing's terrible today because of PM Keys. And we'll talk to the royal journalist, Robert Hardman, about where we are with the other person very much in the news at the moment, Mr. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. This is Talk.
There is definitely some credence to be given to the idea of guilt by association, and mere association or mere presence doesn't indicate guilt or doesn't indicate that you actually participated in these sordid and disgusting crimes. But when you see the repetitiousness, when you see the long-term interactions where it would be very difficult for anybody to be friends with Jeffrey Epstein without knowing the reputation, without seeing the assorted detritus in his path that he's left.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:50 is the time. We're talking a lot about Mandelson today, especially during PMQs. But now let's turn our attention back to the other man who's been on the front page of the papers, the other Prince of Darkness, as he's known. He was a prince. Now, of course, he's Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. Let's talk about it with Daily Mail's Robert Hardman. He's a journalist and author of Charles III, a biography of the King. Very good afternoon to you, Robert.
Afternoon, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. Well, look, I mean, we've lots of focus on Mandelson at the moment, criminal investigations there, but we also know there's some very serious investigations into not just, Andrew, like what he knew when, but also some big question marks about whether or not more women were supposedly trafficked to him by Jeffrey Epstein, his close friend. But also, of course, the news that we discovered last night that he'd been basically thrown out of his house, the Royal Lodge on the Windsor estate, and sent off, banished to Sandringham in Norfolk. Would that be on the orders of the King?
Yes, I mean, the King has, I think, done all that he pretty much can to move Andrew as far away from the royal estate, the royal family, all things royal. I mean, he can't actually, we're not in medieval times, he can't send him to the Tower or into exile, but I mean, he's certainly been exiled from the royal orbit to the outer reaches of the Sandringham estate. And I think the royal family would hope that, that's the last we see of him for a very long time.
They might hope that, given that Andrew quite clearly it's very obvious, thinks he's done absolutely nothing wrong and he's been treated terribly unfairly, has a sense of entitlement that is extraordinary. I'm not entirely sure he is going to go away very quietly. The one thing a lot of people have been saying, a lot of the callers to the show as well, is that actually, the King acted, ruthlessly but absolutely right. basically very clearly, stripping him of his titles, HRH and all of that, and acting much more quickly and voluntarily than the Prime Minister has done, say, with Peter Mandelson, who was giving him his full confidence, much longer at that time. However, there are some questions being raised about who knew what when about Prince Andrew, as he then was, in his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, how far, his royal security, how far that went up in the police, whether the Queen, the late Queen's only principal private secretary would have been told, as senior figures have suggested that he would have been, that, Andrew was hanging around with a very, very bad person, staying at his house, cavorting with him, and that this should be stopped. Do you think that the late Queen had any idea, or her senior staff had any idea what was going on, and should they have acted?
Well, I mean, if they'd known what we know now, of course they should have acted, but I don't think they did. I mean, I think Andrew in particular was very headstrong, and he rather regarded his life as his own. He would do what he wanted. From time to time, palace officials would try and rein him in, and his usual tactic was to go around to see the Queen on a Sunday afternoon for tea, when there were no officials around, and whatever the latest prevailing restrictions on him that he didn't like, he'd sort of say, oh, it's all terribly unfair and they don't understand, and I'm sure you wouldn't mind if I did X or Y, and wear her down, and eventually she'd go, oh, all right then. I mean, that was a sort of pattern of behaviour. Yeah, I mean, I think, going back to your point, I mean, you say, the king was, at the time, he stripped him of all these titles and everything. I mean, a lot of people were genuinely surprised by the severity of that. But as it turns out, the king did take the right decision, because the talk today, the talk for the last few days, hasn't really been, what do we do about Andrew? Because there's really not much left apart from telling him to go and testify. The talk's been on the government's response.
Yeah, it has, and yet again, it comes back. Who knew what when? It is impossible that his own security didn't know, that the senior police didn't know, and that it is impossible. We've been told by Di Davies and Dickie Arbiter, people who've been at the heart of the royal family many years, that this was not passed on to the senior figures in the palace. If they were not parting that information to the late Queen and saying, you need to do something about this, this is going to explode in our faces, this is about the firm, then, for instance, I don't know, why did she act sooner? Why did she apparently contribute towards the £10 million paid to Virginia Giuffre, a woman who Prince Andrew to this day still claims he's never met, certainly didn't have sex with, when she was trafficked, she claims, by Jeffrey Epstein. And of course, she's now dead and unable to tell more of her story. But it doesn't all add up, and there are still questions that need to be answered, surely.
Yeah, I mean, there are, but, we're going back 15, 20 years on some of this stuff. What records still remain? I mean, at the time of when sort of Andrew's descent began back in 2019 with his disastrous Newsnight interview, there were lots of questions being asked then about who knew what when, and what did the police know, and why aren't the police records showing? Was he in a Pizza Express when he said he was in Woking back in 25 years ago, whatever. There are all these questions. There are still, X million redacted files in the USA. I mean, all that the Epstein saga has shown us is that this just never ends. I mean, that Andrew's, I suppose you could chart the beginning of his descent way back in 2010, when the Mail on Sunday had that photograph of him, walking in the park with Epstein after he'd come out of prison.
I would say before then, because he's never met a dodgy billionaire he doesn't like. Let's be honest. I mean, there's some other forms. There's some big question marks about his behaviour when he was UK trade envoy. I mean, you and I will remember, we're old hands, all those Randy Andy headlines. He wasn't the heir, he was the spare. That was what to be expected. But of course, he married Sarah Ferguson. Again, there was even more exploits during and after their marriage. And of course, Sarah Ferguson still, front page news for what she is alleged to have done in these Epstein files. She's now lost, I think, all of her charities or anything that she's been attached to. No one wants anything to do with her. Books being pulped and the like. Do you think that Andrew and Fergie, they're still very close despite being do you think they will sort of just go away, or do you think that there will be a tell-all interview with Oprah Winfrey, there will be a book or something of the like?
I don't think that'll happen anytime soon. I particularly don't think the Duke will do that, because the ex-Duke, Mr. Mountbatten Windsor, he still depends on his brother for what costs for the life he leads. You know, he still has to have his bills paid.
Yeah, keep him on the payroll to keep him quiet, basically.
You know, there's an element of that. But I mean, I think essentially all this stuff boils down into two categories. There is the what did people know, and what did people do? And at the moment, you know, up until now, with Mandelson, for example, it's, well, you know, what did he know about what Epstein was up to? Now, all of a sudden, the focus is on what he did in terms of, you know, passing on, allegedly passing on documents that he shouldn't have done. And I think the same will apply to the Duke and Duchess as was to Andrew and Fergie. What do they know, and what do they do?
And probes about women being trafficked. I mean, again, this saga, as you say, is continuing. The Daily Mail's Robert Harmon, thank you so much for joining us. Very much appreciate that. It's really interesting, Clip. It's really lots of focus on Mandelson right now, but it is on both men. And again, very different allegations against both of them, though.
Yeah, I mean, there are, but I think that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, which is one heck of a mouthful of a name.
I mean, I'm not in a position to talk.
Well, I was going to say, get yourself a shorter name. You know, I think he's going to be sweating now, even though he said he's unable to do so.
I love a Pizza Express. Put me through uni. My team hate it when I mention that. Ian Collins, he's back with us.
I nearly laughed when you said about an interview with